Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning at our City Council study session. We'll go ahead and get started. Ruth, could you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Adamson? Here. Gray? Brown?
Here.
Johnston?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Orr?
Here.
Black?
Here. Thank you. We'll get started with agenda item number 2, Animal Shelter Advisory Board update. Representatives from the Animal Shelter Advisory Board will discuss the board's goals and projects as well as council's policy and expectations. If you want to come up to the table right here, and we will welcome our new Animal Control Director, Animal Services Director. Rhett, how are you doing?
Doing well, myself. Well,
very good, thank you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just give us an update on what the board's been working on.
I'm not entirely what the board's been working on because I haven't had a chance to meet with all of them yet. I know we are expanding their role to some degree. At Animal Services, we're working on hopefully starting some community-based initiatives. We do have a cat issue we need to look at. Lots of kitties.
Before we go any further, I just want to let the people watching at home that your name is Rhett Nix.
Oh, my apologies. My name is Rhett Nix. I'm the Animal Services Director. I took over about 2.5 weeks ago. 2 weeks, 3 days, 4 days at this point. I'm a little new to it, although I've absorbed most of what we're doing and where we're moving towards. We are going to be pushing towards sort of a community education based end on a few things, maybe expanding some things we were already doing to a small degree. We do have a bit of a kitty issue, and we're starting to see that already, so we're already seeing kittens come in boxes. So it's kitten season that started for us, which means we're going to fill up rapidly. We're working on a few training issues, or training things we want to accomplish at the front desk, some customer service, working with the public as well as a few other things like that. Other than that, the shelter is running at least fairly smoothly, so it'll be nice that we can actually, we can maybe alter a few things as we move forward. It's not really looking at anything major that we're dealing with, aside from lots of cats. The dog side we're doing pretty well on. We work with a few local and a few out of the area rescues to help some dogs that were a little bit, needed a little more attention than we could provide. We've got the Friends Board. I met with the Friends Board as well. We do our run with the big dogs coming up in about a week. So we've got that going as well, and then we're already starting to think about Splash Dance at the end of summer. So as soon as Big Dogs is over, my person doing that's going to be out talking to the people in the community to get ready for Splash Dance here in a couple of months.
So Run with the Big Dogs is April 22nd,
April 22nd. You can register up until 9:45 a.m. or you can register up until 11 a.m. I believe. 9:45 is when it starts in the morning if you didn't get in early.
Super. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm Stephanie Adams. I just became the chairman of the advisory board, and I also have had my dog for about 2.5 weeks. So I don't really have, I've been on the board for a little while. I'm hoping to work with Rhett and more clearly defining our role and expectations for what he hopes to use us for. I think that we're probably being underutilized a little bit, and I hope to have a
larger role of sorts.
Yeah,
Right.
for the advisory board to help support the shelter and all the projects that they do.
Super.
Mr. Mayor, Rhett, how are we doing, and Stephanie, with volunteers? I know there are a lot of people that love animals in our community. Are they given the opportunity to participate and to volunteer at the shelter and helping with our animals?
I actually have a volunteer background, something I'm intimately familiar with. We currently have a program in place. We actually just discussed lowering the age with parental consent down to 16 because I have a lot of folks coming out of their junior or senior year who can help us at the shelter who are very interested in helping us. We had Youth in Government Day, which just came through, which really highlighted the need to maybe see if we can get some of our 16, 17, 18-year-old high school students in there, get them some experience in sort of a work atmosphere as well, because volunteering is a good thing to have on your application for college and work as well. We are going to be moving, hopefully, we're discussing potentially a volunteer database system, as well as like an online application that comes with that as well. So we're hoping to expand it to some degree. At the same time, we're hoping to train the volunteers we have to help out in expanding it. So just this Saturday, we had a volunteer training volunteers, which was relatively effective. We have some very good dedicated volunteers who are extremely knowledgeable about the shelter, what we do. They're there, some of them close to 40 hours a week. So they're practically employees at that point. They still have limitations, of course, outside of what employees can do, but we did have Deb, one of our volunteers, actually training volunteers this Saturday, which worked out marvelous. And again, we're going to be utilizing them as much as possible, the folks that have been in the shelter for a long time, to help expand, to hopefully get a few more in there, and then maybe make it a little easier and increase the training so we can make it easier to get to the first step, and then increase the training so they can move farther along within the shelter to help us in different areas.
I was in a meeting last week where there was great concern over the cat licensing issue and how we would enforce that and catch cats that don't have licenses. And for about 10 minutes, I went through all of the new technology that we had, the sidewalk robots that would lure them in, the drone net, and the more I talked, they couldn't. They just.
You're bad.
It was fun for a little while, and then they started getting mad, so I backed off real fast.
You found the door and got out.
Yes, I did.
You have a potential life in politics.
That's funny.
Well, welcome to Pocatello.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Any other questions, Council? Thank you very much. The board is incredibly important to the shelter, and we appreciate that. And I'm confident we're going to have a good working relationship there. We've had one in the past, and I'm sure it's just going to get better and better. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Then we'll move on to agenda item number 3 is the CDBG Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the CDBG Community Development Block Grant Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policy and expectations.
Good morning, Melanie Gigley, Planning and Development Services, and Stephanie Heaton is here. She is the chair of our advisory committee and has been for years, and we'll never let her go.
Good morning. I want to first thank you, Mayor Blatt and council members, for taking such a proactive view on fair housing in our community and for using the CDBG grant funds to help push that forward and to help make improvements for our community as a whole. For the fiscal year 2016, I know Melanie gave you a handout that has some slides in it. The first slide talks about some of the things that the committee accomplished, including the consolidation plan and assessment of the fair housing for fiscal year 2017 through 2021. That was a great big project, and Melanie did an awesome job with that. There's some other items listed there, and for 2016, we were able to do 9 rehabs for owner-occupied housing. 7 of those involved replacement of water and sewer lines, and 2 others were roof replacements, and where required lead-based paint was stabilized. NeighborWorks Pocatello is working on or completed 16 rehab projects for owner-occupied and 2 rental projects, and 2 CDBG funding-assisted infill houses were sold and occupied, and lots for additional 5 homes were purchased for construction in future years. We had several projects for 2016 that were completed around the community. For 2017, we got some additional applications that we haven't had in the past, and we're hoping that once the federal budget comes through, we'll be able to fund all the projects. There was one from Aid for Friends, one from Family Service Alliance. A new applicant was the Pocatello Free Clinic. New Day Products has a project. The Senior Center was a new application. Pocatello Regional Transit was a new application, and the Pocatello Fire Department. And we're really hoping that the federal government will come through with the amount of funding that we were looking at when we tried to pursue those applications for those agencies. On slide 4, it talks about the fair housing activities and accomplishments. We did a whole lot of stuff to pursue fair housing with you guys' support. The next slide talks about some other things that the staff and the CDBG Advisory Committee did with monthly fair housing updates. They do discrimination testing for housing lawsuits in Idaho and in the U.S., fair housing complaints in Idaho and Pocatello, the latest guidance related to the accessibility for disabled families with children and discrimination against people because of sexual orientation or gender identity. Topics include design and construction, maternity leave discrimination, source of income protection, support animals, occupancy standards, and how other Idaho communities promote and further fair housing through participation. All this training is given to us through our CDBG staffing, and we all really appreciate it so that we stay really up on what the fair housing rules are. The next slide, on slide 6, is really important. It shows what the CDBG funding has done in the last 5 years. If you look, we've had a consistently good number of housing rehabs for a total of 136 in the last 5 years. Residential lot acquisition, there was 10. Demolition and clearance, there were 4. New residential units, there were 20. And sidewalk projects, there were 30. And there's a subscript down there to show you where those projects took place. We also, on the next slide, it talks about some of the examples of things that we've used CDBG funding for, and a lot of times it's in association with other funding streams so that we're able to take that funding and make it go much farther in our community. It shows several homes where people with low to moderate income were able to purchase their homes and now have a nice new home or a newly remodeled home to live in. So it's a really great project that we have here. And that's pretty much what we do.
Stephanie, I'm concerned in terms of where we're going. Great accomplishments. What do you see as the things we as a city council can do to support you? And I'm especially interested in fair housing. Are there things that we should be proactive on?
I think that you guys are really proactive by allowing us as a committee to help have more connection with the population so that people know where to come and they know how training can go. We continue to do fair housing about once a year.
Yeah. We're actually doing, because we cover some of the same population, we share with Idaho Falls, and one year we'll do the training here and the next year in Idaho Falls. So this year's is actually an IF, but it's open to both, and it's also a cost issue. We're both fairly small entitlements, so we kind of share the wealth a little bit in getting some of these kinds of things done. But we do that training. We make sure a lot of people are aware of, there's a lot of online training. A lot of places have really gone that way. Or, for instance, Boise sponsored a big one on accessibility and design, but it was webcast then, so we had some local architects here participating. I think for what we have, the amount of money that we have, I think we do a pretty good job of trying to keep the education out there. We get not a lot of calls, but they come in. I think people know where to come looking.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Councilman Bray?
I think as far as the ongoingness of this group, we have some of the oldest housing stock in Idaho. And so that means that we need to mitigate for landowners, and we need to mitigate for the rental community as well, for a housing component. And I don't think that's going to go away for a while. We, with the marginal amount of money we get, we're not making a huge dent. We're just taking care of the most obvious problems.
Councilman Moore?
A good presentation. My question would be does a concise presentation or ad of your, or information of your slide presentation here potentially get into our media sources like the Journal? I think it's a great opportunity because there are people that say we're not doing enough. There are people that say, why aren't we reaching out to help? And this is evidence that you've reached out to a lot. I mean, when you figure what's available in the dollars, I think it's well done, and I think it's just intuitive to allow that to be out there. So, one is then other people may become aware of it, but also those become aware that what the city is doing for
Good point. We do try to get it out there. We've done like the Mayor's Call-In Show. We've been on that before.
No one watches that.
Okay. I will.
Try something else now. Yeah, sorry.
What's been showing up in the Monday and Saturday editions of the paper?
We're always in Mondays. We do try to make some outreach. Sometimes our fair housing articles, for instance, they're submitted. Whether or not they're published, of course, is up to the Journal. We're in the mayor's newsletter. We do make that attempt. Sometimes we're more successful than others. We advertise various places. We will be at the environmental fair, so and that reaches a lot of people. So we do try. We get to Head Start. Where are some of the other places? ISU.
Yeah, but I think maybe, like I say, jokingly we said Saturday and Monday, which we don't have. And, maybe a Sunday paper when people pick it up for the ads or something.
Okay, yeah. I've noted to talk with Logan and see if we can do something to get
because
this out there a
it's
little bit.
impressive. I mean, I just can't wait till I can get on that list.
Come see us.
There you go.
He's on the list, it's just not that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no comment.
No fly list.
Any other comments, Council?
Thanks.
Thank you. It's obviously a very important asset to our community, so thank you very much for the work.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4 has been pulled from the agenda, so we will go to agenda item number 5, cancellation of Executime project. Chris Orenson, Chief Information Officer, will be present to receive official concurrence from council to cancel the Executime project. A majority of the council supported the concept during the February 9, 2017 study session and asked staff to bring the project forward for consideration. Staff is now asking for direction regarding the project so that funds allotted to the project may be used elsewhere. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. I'm Chris Sorensen, CIO for the city. I feel like I should be serving waffles to you all because we're waffling on this project.
And Chris, we never do that.
Never.
So,
Never do waffle.
We brought the project to you about 3 different times, and at the last study session, you all concurred, but it was a weak concurrence, and it was definitely felt that way. And in discussions with the mayor after, and when we considered the ever-rising cost of the project, the lack of solid support from department heads, and even feeling that from you all, we felt it was within our fiduciary responsibilities that we cancel the project. We take those funds and we put them into something of better utilization, especially with some of the things that are happening in the IT world today.
And Chris, I might add, it was weak on our end, and it was less than supportive on that end also.
That's what I said. The department heads were not.
Three of our department heads up there that had worked on it that were kind of in disagreement as well, and so we...
Everything from the project itself to how we were going to implement it, what some of the purposes were behind it, what the goals were. Initially, I think we were looking at utilizing it for purposes that it wasn't really designed for, and it would not have been effective to use it for. And I think we've changed some of those policies and procedures that have overcome some of those issues without this large expenditure of funds. We also were a little short on the fundage. Within the IT budget, we had approximately $70,000 set aside for the project, but it was starting to come in at $130,000. Joyce was saying that we could have found those funds, but instead of going out and searching for those funds, I think it's best that we just cancel the project. We have a process in place that works. It's automating for the sake of automating isn't always the right answer. And when you were looking at these kind of costs, it started to not make sense. At $70,000, it was there, I think. But at $130,000, I think we were well beyond what we were going to get back for automating the process. So with that said, and with your concurrence to cancel that project, we're going to ignore the $60,000 that we didn't have. We do have $70,000 in the IT budget, 20 of which is kind of built into every budget to allow us for unexpected things that happen, servers that crash, requirements that come up unexpectedly. We did have $50,000 in our what's it called? The reserves, or in our excess that we were going to pull for this. What we would like to do, if you stay up with the current news with all the different cyber attacks, things that people are having to deal with, especially locally. Recently, Bingham County suffered a significant attack. They lost significant amount of data. They don't think they will recover in some of those areas for almost 2 years with the data that they lost. While they were recovering, they went to a manual process, handwriting notes and things, and maintaining those. We don't want to get into that position. One of the areas that they suffered from is they did not have complete backups of all their data, and that's where they're having problems. They couldn't afford it, or if they could afford it, they weren't directing the money where it needed to go. We do regular backups, but our backups are starting to have difficulty. For us to do a complete backup of all of our data, it takes 4 days to complete a single backup so that we can put it on tape and then we can store it off-site. One of the things we'd like to do is contract out with a cloud service company that will back up our data into the cloud off-site on a continuous basis so that we don't have to deal with that. The other thing we would like to do, and that would run approximately $1,000 a month in order to do that. Second project, right now we have no intrusion detection system. We have a firewall that sort of protects us from somebody coming in, but firewalls are very easy to circumvent and to get into a system. And they have intrusion detection systems out there that you can buy and install, but we don't have the manpower or the time to sit there and monitor it. The amount of data that an intrusion detection system produces is enormous. We are members of the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They provide a service where they will install the appropriate hardware for us, and then they will monitor it 24/7. And they will highlight anything that happens and provide us information. A system like that would run about $8,500 for the first year. That includes installation costs, and then it would run $7,500 to $8,000 a year for them to provide that monitoring service. An additional service that they provide is intrusion or vulnerability scans, where they will come in, they'll scan our entire network and tell us where the known vulnerabilities are. Some companies do this on a monthly basis, others do it on a quarterly. Again, with our manpower, I don't think we could handle the data from even a quarterly scan, but we would like to go out and have them do an annual scan at a cost of about $13,000. We could, again, purchase our own scanning tools and everything, but it would be almost the same cost, and then we would also have to run it. And again, our manpower and the time that we have isn't there. So we'd like to fund these things for this first year using this money. I've already built it into next year's budget, but we'd like to get a head start on this and get it rolling as fast as we can. The other thing that we have funded already out of our budget was our training tools, our cybersecurity awareness training tools that we've had everybody in the city now complete that has an email account. They have completed that training. We have seen significant improvement in our tests. Originally, when we did our original test, we had a 20% fail rate across the city for people clicking on things that they shouldn't click on in emails. Our second test was down to about 16 or 17%, and after everybody completed training, we were down to just over 4% of people failing and clicking on things that they shouldn't. Significant improvements, significant protection to our networks and our systems. So that's where we want to go with the existing funds, get these projects started, get them rolling, and again, they are going into our budget for next year.
Councilman Orr.
Chris, thank you for your patience as we've waffled through this. Maybe if this is palatable, because as I recall, I think a big increase to that cost of the Executime was part of it was the number of time clocks that we had to purchase.
That was a part of it, a small part of it, but yes.
Councilman Moore and I have had extensive discussions about electronic time cards. Both of us, the county does it, I've done it. Because you're still stuck with a position that you first came to us with, and that is the manual handling of time cards back there. And that's where we first went, is because of the time involved with that. Maybe with the mayor's direction, there could be a small committee put together, something that could work to find a way to get the employees on electronic entry, because once the entry's there, it's done already, then the admin for that department just has to review it, and the supervisor reviews it, and then it goes in. That may in the future, maybe, possibly would lower your costs of manpower throughout departments. I don't know what your thought is on that.
I think it will, but I don't think it will lower anywhere near what we're looking at expending for this project at this time.
We've been doing manual time cards since Adam got kicked out of the garden, or
pretty much.
Yeah. So I think with your ability and talents, I think there's ways that we can get there in the future. I don't want to lose sight of this, because every department that I've talked to said, yeah, it's kind of a pain, because it takes people, half day or a full day to go through this and such and such. So I think that's one option. Now, to your other use of the funds as present, you've thrown out some numbers here. If the consensus is to go forward with that, and that would be my consensus, to give approval to go ahead with it, if it wouldn't be too much trouble to ask what those costs end up being for a year, because I see through 13,000, I see 8,500,
20.
If we could
It's going to raise our annual costs about $25,000 a year.
Okay.
And again, I've already budgeted that for future years.
Okay.
It's just it wasn't in the budget for this year, and we would like to get the initial.
Okay, so my question would be, is as we review this, could as the city grows, could a half-time person assigned to do this half-time throughout the year, could they do it for, see what I'm saying?
I don't think so. I don't think we could hire the expertise at the level that you would need to hire that level of a person in here as a half-time person. The services that the MSISAC provides us are phenomenal. We already take advantage of about 3 or 4 of their free programs, things that they provide out to us. Their cost savings, because of the consolidation of their contracts and everything, are really pretty steep savings. They provide us access to the SANS Institute, which provides training resources and other things. They are there for us whenever anybody currently receives an email that is suspicious with a suspicious attachment. They provide us free tools to go out and submit, and they scan it across like 75 different platforms to make sure that there's nothing there. Additional services provided by them that they scan are different domains for us already, looking for products that are out of date and the insecure various web tools and things that are out there. When they did their initial scan again, we were red in about 3 categories, and we consistently stay green now in those categories.
Is Scow's group, I know you know Scow well, I imagine. Does his group have the capability to assist?
I've not been able to get generate any movement with Dr. Scow and his graduate students to have any desire to come in and assist us.
Well, if any of us could help, I'd be more happy. I would. I know the mayor would also. So, but thank you. Appreciate your time on this.
Any other comments, council?
I don't think we waffled. I think a year ago.
I think I've waffled.
Well, but a year ago we said go for it, and then we get you back because somebody said no, but we'd said yes. And I thought we were the policymakers. It bothers me that as policymakers, there's not a follow-through by what council direction is. And we were convinced by the arguments you made in terms of cost savings, in terms of efficiency, in terms of coming into the 21st century with our staff management tool that this would bring. I thought we were moving ahead. And it concerns me a little bit that we've done this twice now with council consensus, and it comes back to us a third time. Because I don't understand how council consensus gets thrown out the door 2 times. Because that's why you're back a third time.
Yeah, this is the 4th time I've been to.
4th time, okay. So, but I mean, you gave us a run, then we said yes, and then you came back and we said yes. And I just feel like you're selling us stuff about remote entry and care for us by other agencies for security, but we can't even get to the security internally for ourselves for our time cards. Because there is a lot more security that would come by having remote entry and people checking in that way than there is handwritten stuff and things like that. I just am a little concerned that we're back at this place that it got scuttled this last time, because I thought we would go ahead, and had we not scuttled it the first time, we wouldn't be talking $130,000. We were talking $70,000, if I remember right. So, this is the cost of attrition by always questioning a decision that we've made. And I just don't feel good about it. So I'm going to register that.
Mayor, I feel a little different about it. I just soon things come back to us, even though we maybe had a consensus to go ahead and move forward with that. I felt like it was pretty shaky. That's my opinion. I was on the shaky side. I'm still not a believer in time clocks. I felt like,
Yeah, but you didn't have a smartphone until 2 weeks ago.
This is true. But I wasn't, the key there is smart. I wasn't smart enough to operate one. That's right. So I think it's a good thing that it comes back to us. I would just soon relook at it and not do it if it's something we're really not on board to do. That's my take on that. And I got the sense from a lot of departments it wasn't really the right thing to do as well. Not just IT, but a lot of the departments out there too. So I don't have any problem with that. I don't feel like we gave a solid direction that, yeah, go this way if we want it done. I didn't feel that way about it at all. I understand what you're saying, Roger, but it's a lot of money to invest in something we're really not sure about. And if we're really not sure, meaning all of us, I think it makes more sense to not do it than to do it and take our chances.
Council President.
Gary, when you talk to department heads and employees and you're getting negative feedback, is it based on the concept of, well, your big brother's watching me because I'm doing it electronically now, or is it procedural? What was the issue? Just that it was different and it was a change, and now you're looking over my shoulder?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that was a take at all. I just don't know that there was such a problem there that needed to be fixed, I guess.
Okay.
A couple of specifics were like with police officers that take their cars home. Some of those, the SROs, they may not come in the morning. They may go straight to work. You've got water department people that don't come in. They go straight to a job site. Or
I'm sure there's a city somewhere in the United States that's been able to handle this situation.
Well, I'm not saying there isn't.
No, okay. But it feels like we're backwards. I mean, it just feels odd that we have 700 employees and we can't figure out how to do it digitally. That's just odd to me.
We talked about electronic time clock or time cards, and we got resistance back that there was some reason that we didn't want to do it. I talked to the mayor about this because Chris came to us, and my question was, well, how come there wasn't the input? And what the mayor said was, well, there wasn't a lot of feedback to Chris, if this is correct, that until it was seen on the study session. Okay? So from the time Chris was here before, and Chris, was that correct? You didn't get much feedback until come up on the next time?
Not very much. Most of the feedback I get, for example, I was in the restroom today and I was getting feedback on it today.
Okay.
That's the kind of feedback I get. It's fly by night.
And so
I'm in there a lot, so it's a neat place to be.
So I think that's where the issue was, is without putting a team together, then the feedback didn't come until people saw it on the next study session, which really didn't give Chris time to assimilate it and get it to council. That's because I think it's important. We've made the comment several times that we've discussed that again, I think admin can tell if somebody's chronically abusing with overtime or whatever, and so on and so forth. But
The biggest support has come from the fire department, but it hasn't been for the timekeeping piece. It was for the scheduling tool.
right. So I hear what you're saying, because how do we get this to kind of mesh together so that we get a 80% input prior to making a consensus, and then we hear the cries in the wilderness of all the things that people have concerns with it. That's
Well, Council, I might just let you know, it isn't just Chris trying to figure this out. We did have a group of department heads. We had 3 or 4 department heads. We're working together. We had the three of them sitting up there in February.
We also met with all the department heads with the company when they did the
Met with all
initial
the department heads
presentation.
in that. We talked about it in an executive meeting,
Okay.
and we've done it in staff meetings a number of times, and so it's not like we've just been trying to do this in a
well, but that's the feeling
funnel,
we get, that Chris.
Well, while we were, excuse me, while we were
I guess-
discussing it in all those meetings, though, there wasn't a lot of feedback coming back during or even after those meetings.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. There has been a reach out to get that. There has not been a reach back to get the feedback back to the people doing that.
Is that a surprise?
Well,
I mean, because
it
it's
is-
been my experience in the last 7 years that the only feedback we get is either right before we make the decision or after we made the decision.
Unless you give specific.
Well, we've asked for a lot of feedback
Oh,
before,
I know.
and so that's kind of where Chris is, and
Well,
I've got to agree with Gary. Yeah, we've been down this road. We were shaky. The staff was shaky, and if you're going to make a $130,000 investment, I don't like to be on shaky ground when we do that.
And another option that we have is to not do anything with that money at this point, keep it set aside and continue to look at this issue. I mean, I'm not trying to throw you guys under the bus by any stretch. I'm not, but we could set that money aside and see if there's a better way.
I go back to I'm sorry.
It's okay. You can say, go ahead.
No, I just go back to our very first discussion, and the merits of doing it, I think, still stand.
Yes, I agree. That was
And
time.
I think we were all in agreement to that.
I agree.
The merits are there. The cost justification, though,
Right.
was lost over
Got
time.
morphed after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing was just making sure that everybody was on the same page about how exactly it was going to be implemented, because we don't want to put something into place that's then going to, you've got conflicting opinions and people are having different ideas about what
Yes,
the
ma'am.
direction
At one point in
actually
time,
is.
it was going to be everybody, exempt and non-exempts.
Yeah.
Then it was going to be non-exempts only. Then it was going to be non-exempts with exempts that are on performance development plans.
Right.
And so even the process and the purpose for doing it kind of changed. It may not have been in that order either. It's just,
Yeah.
those are different phases
The
we've kind of
thing
went
that was
through.
going through my mind, which you kind of just touched on, was obviously it's important, all of the security things that you've just proposed to us. Just a question that I have is, I've kind of gotten the sense that our current software maybe has some shortcomings, and maybe in the future we need to be thinking about what may need to happen for that. And so that's my question too, is if I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but let's not have that money burning a hole in our pocket and try to figure out another use for it. But is it better to hang on to that and set it aside with the knowledge that we are going to have to do that? I mean, I know both are important, so I guess from your perspective, what is more important, starting this cyber security kind of stuff this year, or having that set aside?
Well, again, about 50,000 of that was sitting in my reserves and could go back into the reserves.
Okay.
20,000 of it is kind of set in my pool anyway to use, though we had kind of earmarked it for Executime. And so it's really kind of that 20,000. I've already spent about 5,000 on the training software and everything. So with just my 20,000 that I have already in my budget to use for things that I deem last minute requirements or something, is there, and I could go forward and do this. It would just take the year mark off of it that we had put on it for the Executime. But the $50,000 that was in reserve could stay in reserve for future use, coming back, looking at this project another time. And again, there was still $60,000 out there that we hadn't even firmly figured out where that was going to come from. Joyce and I had discussed some options and possibilities that we believe we could have funded it. But again, that money would just stay where it's at today or be utilized as it would be deemed appropriate. So really, I'm only looking at about $25,000 for this year that I need to roll in to get some of these other projects started and going. But I can't do it if I'm going to do Executime because I need to keep it.
How about if we chip our employees? Hey?
We can do that at the health fair. You're doing it now.
Animal services.
We'll know when they come to work, we'll know when they're gone, and then later on, if we really want to, we could really know what they're doing when they're not. How about that?
Councilman Bray.
When you presented data in terms of efficiencies and productivity and application, those didn't get pulled out of the air. Those came from other cities.
That's very true. The return on investment were studies from the ADP, the data payroll people, that gather up all this data across the U.S. Realize those, and when I presented, I said a lot of those numbers were soft. The only real hard numbers were actual printing costs, paper costs, and other things. The percentages on error corrections and things, those were data that was provided to us by both SunGuard, Executime, and the ADP folks. But again, those are soft numbers that you may or may not realize, and we did present that information.
But you can drill down to get to probably a real number. If you say these are their sales pitch inflated costs and we're going to take 20%, still 20% of a lot of that data would show that it pays for itself.
And that's what we did when we presented it.
So you know what I'm saying is that they're going to sell it out there because that's the nature of advertising. They make you think you got to have it. But there's a reality that comes because, first of all, they're selling it to other places. Other places wouldn't be using it if they didn't find an effectiveness from it. And their market's growing because people are going to data entry for timesheets and personnel management and stuff like that, scheduling. And it makes a uniformity. It's real hard to see programs that don't interface. Our payroll programs, at least I understand, don't interface very well. And it provides the bridge for that interface so that we were reaching a level of efficiency just there. And when I start hearing about department heads having to go through and ferret out everybody's timesheet, and then we have a wall behind that with some other people making sure that stuff's right, we're spending a lot of time and energy that is simply making sure people get paid instead of making sure people are working. You know, in other words, we're paying a load to take care of paying our employees, and we're not pulling them into productivity areas for other things. And we hear of how short our staff is in terms of time in every department. It seems like if we would go to an efficiency of scale, we would want to free people up from this kind of a rote system to a more advanced system. And so I understand. I don't think we'll ever get there if we don't start moving there.
The timing of it may have been part of the issue too. Right now in our personnel community, we're going through a lot of changes with HR. We're looking at a new performance management plan. We're looking at a new pay system, and those items alone in HR have them fully taxed, and it may have just been a timing issue too, where we couldn't, this isn't maybe the right time when we're going through all these other changes. Maybe when you get these other changes in place, then we come back a year or 2 years from now and relook at this as the next step in the system.
See, if I were an employee that thought I was going to go through the changes that we're considering, and I knew that there was a more permanent track and less subjective analysis that would come in because there's a human error that comes in every time somebody does a handwritten entry. And then you have to compare two things. I would feel more secure about those changes coming in, knowing that we had a hard system behind it rather than a soft system. So I understand that, but I still think that there's a management scale and there's an assurance scale and a confidence scale that doing things collectively rather than piecemeal makes people understand that we're not setting something up that should fail because we're putting it all together. We've got a comprehensive plan instead of a segmented plan.
I don't think you got your question answered. Didn't you ask what was more important, was cybersecurity or the time Executime security? Well, in your mind right now, what would
Right now, if you ever ask me what's more important, cybersecurity over anything, it's going to be the cybersecurity, especially with the continuous onslaught of new attacks and things that are going on out there that potentially could impact. Will any of this guarantee that we won't be hit, that we won't suffer a failure? Absolutely not. I can't guarantee that. But if I'm not doing everything in my power to do what I can to stop the bad guy at the gate from getting into our systems, taking our data, corrupting our data, then I'm not doing my job.
Are we better protected than the city of Blackfoot?
I don't know about the city of Blackfoot, but the county of Bingham County, we are.
Okay.
I was able to get a very confidential discussion with the company that's handling their issues and stuff, and I believe that almost everything that they failed, we have properly in place to prevent it from happening.
And then one last question, and this may not be your forte, and we may have to ask somebody to step up. Would it be that difficult to get to an electronic time sheet? That's a question. I mean,
something that will work with our system. We are really limited when it comes to SunGuard because they only support one company when it comes to timekeeping, and it's Executime. So we're kind of limited that way. Could we ever get away from it? No. We're in bed with SunGuard for
okay, but Executime doesn't have an electronic format for recording your time?
That's what they brought to us.
And is that, so does that look to me like, whether it's from my computer or whatever, I bring it up and it looks like pretty much almost like a written hand time card? I mean, it should have hours of the day and... Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was what SunGuard presented.
Well,
there's the options of doing it 100% with computers, where somebody sits down, they log in, they clock in their time, and they clock out, and they do it all on the computer.
Yes.
The other option was time cards. Not time cards, but time clocks, where you click in, whether it's with a badge, it's not with a piece of paper like we traditionally saw 30 years ago, but you walk in, you either do it with a number, you do it with a badge or something. You kind of got to have those in those areas where it's predominantly blue-collar workers or non-exempt workers that come in mass, where you have 30, 40 people coming in at the same time. Because you don't want them all standing in line at a computer, because most of those shops also don't have computers for every individual. So you'd have to have a kiosk with one or two machines.
Well, why couldn't they just do it at their desk when they got to their computer?
All those, especially on the non-exempt side, they don't have desks and computers. Your garbage men, your water guys, your parks and rec folks, those individuals don't have individual computers and desks that they sit at.
Well, I agree with the other, Councilman Bray and Brown, is that we've got to, because you did a very good job of presenting this the first time, okay? And it was quite clear to us that switching was going to be a time saving. There was some soft costs there, but it was going to be a time saving and just management of resources. Now, I think there was quite a bit of some resistance that thought that Big Brother was going to watch. You know what? If you're taking advantage of your time that you're being paid for the city right now, that's your supervisor's responsibility, not ours. I could care less if you do it. If you get caught and your supervisor's not taking care of it, then he's the one that's going to be on the hook about it, in addition to you. But that was not the whole purpose of this. This was just for efficiencies and bring us up into the 21st century.
And again, I believe those efficiencies were there when we were at the $70,000 threshold.
Yes.
When we got to the
Now they've kind of
$130.
slipped away, so.
And Mayor, you know, when we went through this before, I was kind of on the minority side not to do it, and I voiced that. But I also said when we had the majority to do that, I'd get on board with that. I did that. I'm willing to do the same thing today. If the majority thinks that we need to forge ahead with this and that's what you want to do, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm not trying to stand in the way of progress. I mean, if we think we're ready to do that, let's just send him back, tell him to do it.
I think it's obvious that as far as moving forward right now with what we have, it's probably not the right thing to do. And so do we save our money? I mean, we are married to SunGard.
We are married to SunGard. We're married to Executime.
And at this point, forever, because we haven't made any plans to change that.
You don't have the $3 to $5 million it would take to leave SunGard.
Exactly. And so we may want to have another discussion, another point, and maybe set up a savings account and start looking forward to seeing what our options are. I think that's a real discussion to have. Because now with cloud-based everything, well, it's everything.
There's also a cloud-based solution to this that we never looked at because it gives you a continuous cost that we didn't do the cost analysis on the cloud solution at this time. The other thing is at this time, I would be really, really hesitant to go back to Executime. We've waffled with them so many times back and forth.
I'm okay with that.
It would be.
I'm not. No, I'm okay with that. But so I think that part's done, but I don't think our desire to move that direction is done. Yeah. And so continue to look at options and what we can do. I'd like to have a discussion about what our future holds with our software, and then to the topic at hand and security and moving forward, we could probably spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more and still not have adequate safeguards. But in Bingham County, it was a click of an email, wasn't it?
No, they actually had what's called a port. When you come into a computer system, there's like 64,000 different ways to come in, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And most of those you shut down because you don't need them. And many of them are extremely vulnerable, and you know better than leaving them open. They had left one open. The individual came in, got into a server, elevated their rights to administrative rights. A regular user can't do everything they want on their computer, especially on your servers. You limit who can do what on your servers. This individual came in through this open port, elevated their rights to admin rights, and when they did that, they were then able to put some stuff in those systems that started replicating and destroying their data.
Well, they weren't the only.
And then they didn't have the backups. They didn't have the appropriate backups. Once they caught it and shut it down, they weren't able to restore everything that they needed to restore.
I hate spending money that we thought was going to go for something else, but
$25,000, is that what you're saying, Chris?
Yeah. And again, 20,000 of that was when I originally developed the budget last year at this time. It was kind of a contingency money anyway. We just kind of tagged it for this when this project started rolling.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money to protect what we have.
No. I agree, and I think we need to keep somebody working on the time thing. Yep. You know, we ought to be looking at this again in 3 months, you know?
Well, Mike,
Yep. Yes. Councilman Bray.
Executime has us over a barrel because unless we're willing to go outside of our current computer software, we can't go and find this resource, right?
Mm-hmm. That was correct.
And because we're over a barrel and we waffled, $60,000 cost got added to it. Sometime we got to pull the trigger and say, that's going to continue to happen with this company because they have the monopoly on it right now. And so if we're not willing to look at redoing all of our software to find something that works in time management, then we're going to be back to the same company and they're going to be in the same position saying, well, if you want it, this is what it costs you.
That is correct, and we will be back to them. And I think we need to continue to look at the project. I think we need to look at some other options on the project, though. Those costs went up for a couple of reasons. One was we wanted to put time clocks everywhere. The department heads that wanted that know that I'm not in 100% agreement with them on that. I can live with it. I just don't 100% agree with the necessity, because then we're giving up tools that are available through Executime, such as doing it online at your desk or remotely with a smartphone. So I think we're giving up some things there. Other costs that went up was we increased significantly the number of individuals that we were going to incorporate into the scheduling tool. Originally, we only looked at the fire department when we were at the $70,000. About $30,000 of that additional cost was when the police came back and said they would like to do it. I had no problem with that because they need it just as much as the fire department. But maybe what we've done is we've combined too many projects at this time, trying to bring in the original idea of timekeeping, and we expanded it to include the scheduling tools. Maybe we separate those out as two separate tools, and we work with police and fire to fund, budget, and implement the scheduling piece, because the fire department told me the other day that they need a scheduling tool. Whether they go with this or go somewhere else, they still need a scheduling tool to handle their scheduling requirements. Maybe we break those out and we work toward getting the scheduling tool in place separate, or at least as a separate project away from the timekeeping tool. And then we bring the timekeeping piece back more in line with the original cost.
So let's do this. We will get that committee back together, and we'll get all that worked out. And we'll come back and we'll talk about it yet again to the council. We'll go from there. But for the sake of moving the meeting forward, are you okay with spending the money and stuff for the security end of things right now, and then bringing this back?
If it's $25,000, we're right in there.
And I'll bring those back to a regular meeting once the contracts.
Council on a council agenda anyway.
Yeah,
so.
Because I have to go get the contracts in place and everything else to firm up the costs.
I guess I would maybe want to have a little more detail on it, because you just briefly said, well, it's $1,000 a month for the cloud and it's this and that, and I guess I would maybe want a little more information before I would say for sure on that, because I still kind of feel like maybe we should hang on to some of that. And I guess if you convince me with more information,
well, yeah,
maybe
the 130,000, and I've already used about 5,000 that I took elsewhere out of my budget. So I'm really kind of only saying I'm going to use the 20,000, which I had built in as a contingency fund, to go back and to start utilizing that. And I'll bring that to a regular council when I have those contracts ready to look at and present to you.
I think that the two issues are two issues, and I think security is an issue to itself, and we need to address it. And I think time management is an issue to itself, and we need to address it. I think that we need to be on security right now. I mean, all you got to do is look at and see how vulnerable cities are. Dallas has just been through 2 episodes, and, you think that they're pretty secure, but they haven't been. So I would look at doing the security stuff. I think that's going to be an ongoing concern, and we need to be addressing that. And I also think that we need to be looking at the time thing and looking at how our departments buy in based on the particularities that they have for that department. And that should be part of our budget process, I would say. That we be looking at how we're going to achieve this in a budget process.
So you're okay moving forward? Steve, Jim?
Move forward with what we need.
So we're okay moving forward. Bring that to us to a council meeting when you get those contracts and stuff ready and prepared, and then we'll get together and we'll get that committee back together and looking at this time clock thing again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And we'll move on to agenda item number 6, Public Works Design Principles and Standards Update. Engineering staff will give an update from the February 9, 2017 study session regarding the City of Pocatello Public Works Design Principles and Standards. Staff will provide a proposed schedule to incorporate the design principles into Pocatello Municipal Code 12 by ordinance and to adopt the standards by resolution, which may be modified from time to time. Merrill?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Merrill Quayle, Public Works Development Engineer for the City of Pocatello, and there are secret staff behind me that will support me if we need.
Are they invisible or?
Well, I'm not sure.
Do we need to do a security check?
So they are here too if there's questions that need to be raised at that time. The comments in the manual that we've received, I have put them in and addressed those comments and incorporated them into the manual. The manual was sent out to utilities, the Builders Association, some engineers that we deal with on development, and city departments for these comments. So that has been incorporated and in the manual that I sent out to you that you'll be able to view now.
That is some of the most boring reading I've ever had.
Well, then I've done my job.
You've done your job.
So it's kind of hard to put color into all of that and make
On
it
the first
light.
page, there's one little bit.
There we go. So along with that, the manual, we also have the IDLE standards for public works and the revisions to the IDLE standard for public works, and I brought that just for demonstration. We have the 2017 edition. So when we come to a regular city council meeting, to be aware that we will be adopting the 2017 edition, and again, just the updated pages for the revisions to the IDLE standards for public works. Going through that manual, there's nothing that is substantial that has changed in those revisions that will affect development and the procedures how we do work in Pocatello on that manual itself and on the revisions. The manual, the Public Works Design and Specification Manual is the one that you're looking at is the front pages to all this. This is taking other documents that we've had and compile them all into one place and trying to make things clear on how we do work inside of the city of Pocatello. So, and then on that note, with the ordinance, the draft ordinance that was submitted to you, and it is draft because we are working with the legal department now to make sure the duplicates and everything in the other sections are taken care of and referenced properly. So again, you will see that ordinance forthcoming to a regular scheduled council meeting, hopefully here in the near future, to be able to, for comments, discussion, and adoption. So that was it's as boring as it is reading, it's as boring as here presenting probably. So unless you had specific questions on what you were able to read or what was highlighted in the green, which is stuff that would be new. Like I said, there was probably 6 items through the manual that was highlighted in green that was actually new to the city of Pocatello, what we haven't done in the past.
Council, questions?
It wasn't that boring of reading.
The only thing
Considering what you read all the time.
I think it was just the length, because it's a bit longer than a real estate contract.
So any questions for Merrill?
One comment. When we look at the outside sources, like the manual, we have to International Firefighter Code or whatever it is, and Builder's Code, all those things. One of the experiences I had is that when you get a couple people together that are reading those things independently and they're able to interpret things together. And I'll give you, for instance, our church has a daycare in it, child care. One person was reading it very literal, and the other person said, that is something that is stipulated because if you're in a house, you got a lot of corners you got to turn. You don't have wide hallways. When you have wide hallways, then that corner turning stuff, one door out into a hallway goes away. And so when they had a conversation between them, they started to understand how all these codes and everything has a practical application. Are we encouraging that? I mean, engineering's got a different thing, but we set up rules, but how do we then make make sure that those who interpret those rules are kind of caught up on the curve, so there's a practical sense of it rather than just a very literal, and we're all trying to put square things in round holes in.
Right. I think I understand what your question is. What we have done in the past is we've had, like with the stormwater manual or other changes that has come up, we have had sent out notices to contractors, developers that would be affected by these areas or engineering, and had them came in, and we've put on a small little seminar. For instance, a few weeks ago we did a Bannock Utility Coordinating Council. We had a breakfast early morning here, and we were able to talk to a lot of contractors about some of the changes coming up with damage prevention with the utilities, dig line, and the new legislation that was coming up. So in the same manner, the plan is once we get this put together and everything, and we have been doing individual education, for instance, on our street patching has been a big topic with everybody, coming in line and enforcing what we're doing. And we're still reaching out to them individually. But we plan on doing a collective education to allow them to ask questions and so forth. It's I'm in a unique position right now as with the Idaho Standard for Public Works Construction as the executive chair for the state of Idaho right now. So that has helped me understand and be able to, with the committee, to see a little bit more of an insight on how the general contractors, the EGC, DEQ, and so forth, some engineers that are on there too, how that is interpreted. And I will be able to relay that to us here on southeastern Idaho once we do that collective meeting.
Merrill, my bottom line concern is whether or not the implementation of anything here would change the bottom line for our developers or contractors. Is there anything that's going to increase costs?
There is one that's going to increase the cost, and one of the developers asked, they were concerned of that because there was not a cost. But on the one that we know, just a second, I did earmark that one. It's on section 5, and it's page 509. And that is after the 2-year warranty, prior to the 2-year warranty period, is to put in a fog seal on the asphalt. And that could be done by a private contractor or talking with our street superintendent, also with Tom, that we would be willing to place that fog seal as long as materials were purchased. And we've put that in that so they can estimate that it would be 30 cents a square yard to be able to do that. This will, at the time of construction and after everything is, building is being moved forward, this is a treatment that is necessary to keep the asphalt revitalized and to lengthen its use life out. So we feel that this is necessary, and we've given that upfront cost so they can anticipate that.
This is a change that has not been in the existing code.
That is one of the ones that's in green and in change, yes. The others, implementing, there's always cost that comes with enforcing and making sure you're doing it right. For instance, our patching, it is costing the utilities and those that are digging in the right-of-way more money right now. However, it's going to save the taxpayers in the general fund and the street fund in having to go back and repair those in the future. So we're getting the better product and the product we should be, where we're allowing them to dig into the roadway.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Merrill?
I have one other question then with no questions. the schedule then, if we could, we'd like to bring this to the regular scheduled city council meeting. Like I said, maybe as soon as the second meeting in May, if that's okay, that we could bring the ordinance and the actual manual for adoption, if that is okay with everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
All righty, thank you.
Yep, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 8. Bannock County Historic Society Fort Hall replica Pocatello Junction facilities update. Oh, did we miss number 7? Oh, we're going to go ahead and go to number 7 then, not number 8. I was trying to help DEQ get out of here earlier, but we'll go ahead and go to agenda item number 7, proposed changes to CDBG program requirements. Neighborhood and Community Services Division staff will be present to discuss proposed changes to the city's requirements for Community Development Block Grant CDBG funding programs. The proposed changes will improve bidding and procurement processes, which may also reduce administrative costs, offer a new program to low and moderate income homeowners, and amend the existing Section 3 policy. And I apologize, Melanie.
No worries. Melanie Gigley, Division Manager.
Adam Lane, Property Rehab Specialist.
What we did, and this was largely Adam's project, he came in from outside the city, so he took a look at our processes and he's going, we could probably make this better. We can make it better for our side and we can make it better for the contractors that we work with. So he started digging, and we've run this past to make sure we're in compliance with all of HUD's regulations and all of the rest of the regulations that the federal government can find to make us toe the line on. And I think what he's come up with will make it a lot easier for us to administer the programs that we have in existence now, but probably also make it easier for contractors, because sometimes they just look at us and say, you want too much paper and too much of this and too much of that. So what Adam has done, and either you can describe him or I can, whichever. Go ahead. Okay. I'm the one that likes to talk, The 2 new programs, and they also are in compliance with state law. We haven't, and the city's own bidding policies. But one of the things that HUD allows is what we call procurement by micro purchase. And that's something that up to $3,000 or $2,000 if it's Davis-Bacon, because that's just a different threshold. We can do these without competitive quotations if the price is reasonable. And what we'll be looking at is past similar projects. Maybe we have to call a couple different people and just say, what would you do this for? But if it is under 3,000, we can just simply do it without competitive bidding. And we would do that among qualified suppliers, so we wouldn't just choose one HVAC, for instance. We would shift it among anyone who is qualified and licensed by the city of Pocatello to do the work. The next level would be what we call procurement by small purchase procedures. That's something that the city already allows without formal bidding up to 50,000. But it doesn't require a formal sealed bid process. It just simply requires 3 quotations, and HUD makes us have at least 2 anyway. So it requires 2 from at least 3 vendors. Describe the project to them, say, what would you charge to do this? And rather than going out for a bid for 15 days just to get somebody's water line fixed, this is not effective, although we do cut that one a little short. We've gotten really good at that this last year. Once it's deemed generally the low bid, but also we can look at things like, can you start right now? We have had a situation in this last year where some of the, one contractor got all of the low bids, so some of the work didn't end up getting done before the snow flew. So that is one of the things. Those are 2 of the programs we would like to do. I think it's good for both the, like I say, the staff side and for our customer side, whether our customers both are loan applicants and our contractor customers. The next change that we're suggesting is a home rehab grant. Right now, everything we do has to be by loan, and that kind of takes us out of the market of being able to do small items that could benefit homeowners before it becomes a problem. So when their sink is leaking, we've always said, unless we have at least $1,000 worth of work, it costs too much to run it as a loan to take care of a $200 or $300 project. This new one would allow us to do that. It would stay under the micro purchase. If a homeowner comes in and says, my sink is leaking, I can't say that very well, is there any way you can help before it leaks to the point where there's a ruined floor, a ruined basement, and mold? We could go in there and do that. We would run it as a grant, so we don't make a loan, we don't make finance have to track a loan, some of the administrative overhead. We would, right now, our idea is to start at no more than $30,000 of our rehab program money. This isn't a new pot of money, it's just within our rehab program in any given program year. It would be one of those things where the same owner couldn't come back later and say, well, now this is happening. They couldn't just break things into small projects to avoid doing it as a loan. Because if you have that many problems, we'll go ahead and do the rehab. But again, it allows us to address small problems that could become big problems, or really it's the only thing they've got, but the clientele we're serving generally can't afford to do any of these. It becomes a wait until it is a problem, then we qualify for your program.
For example, I know that there's a lot of elderly who need a ramp to their house. Would this be something that they could get a ramp?
It might, yeah.
I mean, just
Free.
As for instance,
yes.
Yeah.
It
so
might
that
be.
They could stay at home, but because their mobility has changed, they're able to stay at home still, and it precludes some other costs.
Yeah, it would be something like that, or maybe they need a step-in bathtub or something that's well below the cost of what we generally considered a project, and not wanted to put the overhead in to do a tiny project. This is something, sure.
Okay, that's just using as a for instance.
And that's something we like to do. We want to let people age in place. Removing architectural barriers is one of our goals to meet. But yeah, that would be an option, certainly, or a ramp outside the house or something like that. So
I think it sounds like a great idea as long as you think you can manage it. It would seem to me that there could be a lot of that stuff out there once the word got out.
And we would have to keep an eye on it, yes. It's possible that we open a door and we say, really, what did we do to ourselves? And in that case, we might have to back up and say this isn't working for us, because instead of reducing overhead, there's so many that it's increasing overhead, and that's not something we want to do. We want more of our money to go into projects and into helping people than administering them.
I think that's one of the reasons we limited it to $30,000 for this first year, just to kind of see how it goes first. To kind of at the $3,000 limit, that's 10 projects, potentially 10, 15 that we can definitely handle.
And I think, right now we can definitely do that. If we run out of our $30,000 in the first month or two, we're going to have to look at it and say, wow, maybe we have to reevaluate. Maybe this isn't working. So that's that is something to keep an eye on, yes.
I think it's a great idea. It seems to make a lot of sense to me. When I hear you say one contractor got all the low bids, you can only do that so often before all the other contractors are no longer interested in participating. And I feel like you guys are smart, and you know what, on those mundane and routine kind of amounts, you're going to notice if something's out of line on a dollar amount or something like that. So I think it's great to get moving and not have it take so much time and take a lot of other people's time. So thanks, Adam, for the ideas on how we can be more efficient.
Councilman Orr?
That was so hard. I mean, that was warm.
Hey, you.
Is that, Joyce nodded the head, is that standard procedure across the city departments? Is up to $50,000? Does not have to be?
On the purchasing policy? Yes, you have to have sealed bids when you have 50,000.
Yeah.
Okay, below that. Okay.
And at 50, we would go the formal sealed bid process. We rarely do that.
Yeah, okay. I've sat on a couple of the other committees. Who makes the decision on this? Is this the board?
The decision on...
Up to $3,000. Is this the board? Is this you?
It would be a staff level decision. If you adopt the policy, we would then say...
When you say staff?
The three of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
A loan, is that approved by staff also, or is that the board?
No, the credit committee.
The credit
We have an
committee.
internal credit committee that when we get an application, like we have one in for a roof right now, we make sure they qualify under HUD's requirements first. And this would still be true here. We can't serve people over 80% area median anyway. But for the loan, and maybe we would want to do this with the grant, we can still run that through the credit committee. That's a perfectly good countercheck check. But we take it to the credit committee and say, okay, this person qualifies under HUD. This is what they want to do. The house is structurally sound. It's we can go ahead, we can do this without causing further damage, something like that. And then yay or nay. There's enough money to do this. They meet the qualifications. How should we proceed?
Okay. This will get Ms. Adamson's attention.
Whoops.
In the past, has CDBG provided any loans or grants for landlord-owned property?
We have not. We have stayed with homeowners. If we were to do stuff for rentals, and the city had a rental rehab program eons ago, well, I was around, so maybe it is eons ago. It's a little bit more of an administrative issue because your tenants have to be 80% area median for at least a certain amount of time. So one of the issues with that is that the city then has to verify once a year income. It becomes a burden for the landlord.
For the owner of the property or the renter?
The renters. So they would have to agree to rent to 80% or lower.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
I think the housing authority does so.
They have a rental rehab program that they work with NeighborWorks. Yes, they have a pool of money. They do that. What theirs is they say that you have to agree to take voucher holders. You don't have to take any given potential renter, but you have to be willing to.
Council President?
Yeah. I like the idea, and I think the more resources we can provide this area, the better. But if it becomes a burden, is there a way to take the program and the parameters and ask an organization that already does this stuff, like SECA, where they have, can an outside group administer this?
Yes. Short answer, yes. The longer answer is we're still responsible because it's our money. So we would still have some of the administrative overhead, making sure that it was done correctly. I have a couple other things.
Oh, you have a couple other things? Okay. We're ready to let you go with it.
Well, she either started me over or gave up on me. I'm not sure which.
I just knew it was not going to be
It wasn't going to be done, so.
One of the things, and this is not a big problem, but one of the things that we have
We'll make it a big problem. That's okay.
Oh, okay, I'll give it to you. One of the things we have not done well in the past is on the contracts between the owner and the contractor on our rehab issues, we have not had the city as a party to it. That's something that Adam caught for us too and said, really, we are supposed to be party to that. It is, in the end, obviously it is all CDBG's issue and the city's, but we are not party to it should we need to actually intervene in it. By that, I mean we're not party by signature. It's something we should be doing. We should have a contracting officer doing that. I failed to put this in the memo. It went out of my brain till, I don't know, probably the middle of the night. So one of the things that we're suggesting is that just for that purpose, the division manager of Neighborhood and Community Services be authorized to be the contracting officer. It can, I mean, generally, it's always the mayor, and we're happy to run them all through legal and to the mayor. But for these purposes, and this isn't the one where the city is signing on the dotted line, it's just signing as kind of an oversight, correct?
It approves the procurement and then gives authorization to spend those funds. So
Does that give us any liability?
That's what I was going to ask.
we have that anyway.
Not any more than we probably already have. We are on, basically, because this is the city's money, even though it is CDBG, ultimately, we are responsible.
If someone was hurt on the job, I'm going that far.
Well, presumably the contractor has workers' comp. It's something that we check for. They're licensed, they have a bond, so they're insured. It should be them first, yes. However, in this situation, I suspect if it came down to a problem, they would still come back to the city whether or not a signature is on the page. Right. And this is something we can certainly, we'll run the language past legal. I'm not just going to start signing it. But I think ultimately we are on the hook. Or at least they would try to put us there.
Sure.
Well, that was my concern as well, is with our name on it, if the homeowner is unhappy with something, then they go back and it's a
And
little
our
more
name's on it
apparent
anyway. The city's listed all over. It's just nobody from the city is
actually
signing those contracts. And it's the procurement issue is really not actually, it doesn't say has to be a contract. We have to have, it can be on a purchase order or something like that, which we don't have a purchase order system. So it would be on the agreement that we need to be approving everything.
Okay.
I think it makes sense.
Okay. Then one more really quick one. I think it's going to be really quick. In the past, you have adopted what's called the Section 3 policy, which says that registered Section 3 contractors or individuals get a preference in bidding, meaning depending on the size of the bid, how much higher than they can be than the low bid, and by virtue of being Section 3, which means low income, they get a preference and get that bid. Okay, that's been in effect for a while. We've only ever had one contractor register. He didn't re-register, so we don't have anybody claiming that preference. But it is a preference we are required to give as CDBG. What we'd like to do is expand it to 30-mile radius of Pocatello. So that, because we have a lot of contractors that come in from just outside city limits that do a lot of work for us that may qualify, and it may help us also increase our contractor pool if they know that this preference is available to them outside city limits.
That sounds good.
Yeah, other than how define a low-income contractor?
There are certain requirements. One of them is that, like if they're a sole proprietor and they're under 80% area median, they can provide proof of that, and then they are a Section 3 registered contractor. If they are on other kinds of public assistance and provide proof of that, that's one way. If they are a business that employs, I think it's 51% or more, and they prove that of LMI individuals, that's another way they can qualify.
Oh, okay. I don't know any low-income contractors. They seem to build pretty big homes.
It kind of depends on what the economy is. We had several low-income contractors a few years ago.
Well, probably, yeah.
Like I say, there is nobody that has taken advantage of it right now. Maybe expanding it by a radius.
Is there anything with minorities also in that area?
We do not currently have a preference. It's not a CDBG requirement. We do have a requirement to reach out to the MeBe-Weebie minority and women business enterprises. And we have an extra 11 to 15 bid. We always send out to an extra 15 to 16 places to encourage, to try to reach those populations. It's not something we've gotten a lot of, but we do make the effort to make sure that the bids and the quotes are made available widely.
Okay, we good?
Yeah. So I'm hearing approval to come back to a regular session for adoption. Thank you. I'll probably see you next week.
Thank you. Now we'll go to agenda item number 8.
Yes.
Bannock County Historical Society Fort Hall Replica Pocatello Junction Facilities Update. Parks and Recreation staff will be present to review past agreement terms and conditions with the Bannock County Historical Society. Staff is recommending a revision of the current agreement that will allow Bannock County Historical Society to assume operations of the Fort Hall replica and Pocatello Junction facilities and the Fort Hall Replica Commission.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and council members. John Banks, Parks and Recreation Director. And
Alan Green, Park Superintendent.
We're very pleased to be able to present to you today, and we're excited about the potential of this arrangement, and it would be good for both parties. As you know, the city has traditionally operated the Fort Hall replica and the Pocatello Junction facilities, and of course we own the property up there on that campus. Under prior agreements, the city and Bannock County Historical Society have collaborated to make the Historical Museum replica and junction facilities available to the community. The society has been responsible for collecting admission fees for all facilities and then remitting a share of those revenues back to the city each year. Based on discussions that Alan and I have had with the society the past couple of months, staff and the society would like to expand the society's responsibilities to include oversight of the Fort Hall replica and junction facilities in addition to the museum. It's felt that expansion of the society oversight would mutually benefit both parties for a few key reasons. First, the replica junction and museum, they're all located in the common fence compound in very close proximity to each other. With the museum being a year-round facility, museum staff would be capable of on-site supervision and staffing of the replica in a much more efficient fashion. The society has also expressed a desire to engage with the community to make some improvements to the junction facilities, which we think is exciting and has the potential to improve the overall visitor experience and hopefully the attendance up at all of those facilities. Lastly, staff is hopeful that some of the replica cost savings for part-time staff, a portion of those might be repurposed into the department to better serve some real strong community needs, maybe replenishing some cutbacks over at the CRC facility kind of first come to mind, possibly for council consideration. Staff has also, through the process, been very conscious and respectful of the, I guess, the significant history and the valued contributions of the Fort Hall Replica Commission. And it was very important to us and also to the society that the Replica Commission be offered or be provided with an opportunity to continue functioning in their traditional capacity. And we've been very careful to include language in the draft agreement that preserves this opportunity for continued contribution by the Replica Commission, working in conjunction with the Historical Society Board, and continuing to provide input and collaborate. So as you can probably tell, staff is supportive of this proposed change and for the reasons stated, and we have prepared a draft agreement for the council consideration, and we're anxious to hear some of the council input and receive further direction from you.
Council, what are we hearing from, say, the county commissioners on something like this?
Yeah, Lynn, I guess, has briefed the county commissioners on this, and they are in favor.
Are there any, does anyone have a vision for what really could take place there? Some long-range planning. I think we have a great jewel there that hasn't been buffed properly.
We agree with you. I think it's, there's been some challenging budgetary times in the city, and I think resources are always stretched a little thin. As far as kind of working that facility in conjunction with the zoo, Peter Pruitt and I have some pie-in-the-sky ideas of maybe using some of that open available space adjacent to the replica for a potential overnight camping opportunity to capitalize on that space and also provide, I guess, multiple day potential for visits to the the zoo and increase, revenues. There could be some Idaho Parks and Rec grant funding in that regard. Peter's in the midst of a 20-year master plan revision for the zoo campus, and we'll be kind of touching those bases as we go. I think we need some kind of a plan and a document prior to applying for grant funding to give us a little validity, but that's one thing that's out there. I guess we're excited about this. The Parks and Rec Department has, I guess, so many high priority things that we're concentrating on. Maybe the resources are allocated to those and not so much to the replica. So we're excited to hear that the Historical Society has plans of engaging the community to try and make some significant improvements, maybe an Adopt a Junction building type of program. And I guess, of course, with the Replica Commission's input and guidance, improvements to the replica facility. So they have the staff resources and the wherewithal to kind of try and run that down. So we're excited for all those opportunities.
John, has there been interaction with the museum board, the historic board, and your department?
Yes, Alan and I have met a couple of times with Lynn and various board members, so they also seem to be really excited about the prospect.
Thank you.
Other questions, Council?
I think it's a great idea. I just had, I guess, so we'll be taking over doing a little more landscaping, but we'll save a lot more staff time.
Correct.
So it's still going to be a positive benefit to us, right? And then I noticed in the agreement also that there would still be a designated person from the city that would meet with them monthly. I was just curious. Okay. I sort of assumed that, but I was just curious. So
Yeah, we're going to keep maintaining the area, so we'll probably meet with them. We'll meet with them more often than once a month.
And we're planning on remaining involved to a degree. If they're proposing significant improvements, of course, we want to be in on that decision-making process, and the Replica Commission as well. But Alan, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're up there maintaining green space anyway, I guess, assuming a tiny bit more while we're up there anyway. It really wasn't much to take over for what we're getting.
Yeah. So. A fair trade for us.
So is this revenue neutral, you think?
Actually, no. We stand to save. I think our best calculations are a little over $7,000, and it's basically the part-time staff time. We need to retain. It's about a $18,500 total budget, and we need to retain some of that for utilities and kind of upkeep of the place. So the main savings is a part-time staff time, but it's over $7,000.
But I also read where there's the society gets revenue from everything now.
Yes, and that's kind of taking that into account.
Beer and wine sales or something like that.
Well, yeah, we'll retain the beer and wine sales just because I'm not sure they have a mechanism in their policy for that, and they're really kind of maybe 2 a year, so they're few and far between, so we thought it best that we retain that for now.
So is there an expectation that they're going to reinvest the revenue? There have been nonprofits before that find that they generate a way to make money, but then they don't reinvest in their nonprofit.
We didn't get into specific discussions of what are you going to do with the original revenue. I'd imagine some of it they're anticipating, they're going to have to dedicate, now they're on the hook for the staff resources, so that revenue would kind of neutralize that a bit. I think you're going to see that to a degree. I know they have a lot of excitement and plans that they were throwing around for improvements to improve the experience, but I think most of it is going to be a really well thought out, dedicated community engagement effort to try and get the community involved and rally and make some improvements up there.
And the Historical Society is a 501c3.
Oh, that's good. I am not sure. That's a good question. I would imagine so.
It'd be nice to know.
Yeah, I'll check on that.
Council, any other questions? So do we have a consensus for him to bring this in front of a... So why don't we move forward with this and we can adopt it in a council meeting?
Okay. Yeah, if the council's comfortable, if we got the thumbs up from the council, I think we're prepared to come on the 20th, if that would be okay.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Super. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 9, use of capital contingency funds to purchase police equipment.
By the way, they are a 501c3.
They are a 501c3, by the way. Police department staff will be present to seek council's guidance regarding the use of capital contingency fund in the amount of $180,000 to purchase 2 additional patrol vehicles and a shooting simulator. Total amount of funds available is $619,187.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Jim Peterson, Deputy Chief, Pocatello Police Department. I also have Captain Roger Shy with me today. In the fiscal year 2017, Council authorized setting aside some capital contingency money. As the Mayor stated, $619,187 is available in that account. We're halfway through the year and that money's still sitting there. So we thought we'd take this opportunity to come to you and explore the option or the possibility of using some of those funds to make some capital purchases that would benefit the department and also benefit the community. As the Mayor indicated in reading the agenda item, the request would be to purchase 2 additional police vehicles and also a shooting simulator. Over the last 5 years, on numerous occasions, I've sat in front of the council and explained that one of the goals of the department is to have a car per officer program. There are many advantages to these particular types of programs. First and foremost is the availability to get officers to the scene when they need to get them there. We've often had critical incidents where the officers who are on duty, they can respond to the scene and they get tied up at the scene, but that doesn't mean that calls stop coming into the call center. And we can get officers here to help backfill into those areas, but we have no way to get them to where they need to go because we don't have the vehicles for that. And so this would help alleviate one of those situations. There's also the advantage of reduced maintenance costs and an increased visual presence in the community as a crime prevention technique, and it's also, quite frankly, a recruitment technique. When an officer is looking for a place to go work, if he knows he is going to have a car available to him that he can take home, that is an incentive for him to come to a department. There have been numerous studies that have been conducted in reference to these types of programs. Probably one of the most extensive was completed by the Tacoma, Washington Police Department. It was conducted by, they actually authorized the study. It was actually conducted by an outside analyst, and it was conducted over an 8-year period. So we're not talking about just a 1-year shot, flash in the pan. It was, and they found several, basically the things that I just described to you, the advantages of this type of program. Really, there's increased savings in maintenance, there's increased savings in operating costs. One of the things I found interesting in the study, however, was that I had not thought about was actually increased efficiency and time savings of the officers who are having to haul their equipment in and out of their cars on a daily basis. The time that they're not spending doing those things, they're available to be out taking calls and handling issues within the community. In fact, at one point, this study indicated that they estimated about $150,000 savings in those, all 3 areas combined. One of the drawbacks, I'm going to be honest with you, any program has drawbacks, and really the biggest drawback to these programs that just about any study you read will tell you is the initial cost. Getting that that number of cars that you need to outfit your complement of officers with that vehicle. That's really the big drawback. Once it's in place, the savings really tend to start to roll in. The officers take better care of their cars. Again, another surprising fact that I found is in their study was that they actually have fewer accidents, which is always a big plus. We spend a lot of money in fixing cars involved in accidents. But the idea behind it is the officers take better care. They take ownership in that car. That's their office. That's where they work for 10 hours a day plus. And so they take great pride in that vehicle and take a little bit better care of it. Again, another one of the downsides is while we may have some savings in gasoline and maintenance, and the cars will actually last longer because only one guy's driving them, so they don't need to be replaced as often. There is equipment within that vehicle, however, that has a shelf life. It may not last as long as the car does, and it still needs to be replaced, such as computers, cameras, e-ticketing equipment, and those types of things. Radars. Although I will have you know, we did have some radars. We did a recent radar certification, and there's some radars that they finally took out of service that were there here when I started. So that's 30 plus years of service. So I can't complain too much about that. So that's one of the reasons we've taken, we've tried to be creative in the last 5 years and been able to add to our fleet of patrol vehicles. And we have added in the last 5 years 13 patrol vehicles to our fleet. But we still have a ways to go. And so we saw this as an opportunity to approach you to see, get your feelings about using that money for this particular purpose, to add at least 2 more to the fleet and move us further in that direction. We do have enough vehicles now that we do have 2 officers assigned per car, and so we're seeing some benefits that way. However, depends on our staffing levels. We're there because we're down on staffing, and so we don't always have a full complement of officers. And then the other issue with that is that when a vehicle breaks down, which they do, then I've got 2 guys out of service with a car. I've got to find another car for them. So I can't just have the bare minimum number of cars. I do have to have some spares to keep people on the road. So that would help us in that effort, and again move us towards that ultimate goal. And again, one of the other things that was quite common in the studies was the increased presence of the police department, the police officers within the communities. They're driving to and from work, and it also increased enforcement, because even though they may be technically in an off-duty status, if they see something of a serious nature, they're going to be obligated to stop and take care of that. And again, the presence in the neighborhoods is a crime deterrent. Neighbors, I think, like having police cars in their neighborhood. So I know people will comment about just having one drive through. If they have one parked outside, they like that. So again,
are there any studies that show that there's any reduced crime in areas where there's an officer's car present?
I don't have any statistics for you. I'm sure that I could find something. I'm sure they have done those. Typically an increased, I know there are studies simply from officers on patrol, that there's studies that show, at least from a traffic perspective, people, when they see somebody pulled over, have a tendency to obey the traffic laws for at least 30 minutes afterwards, because they're still thinking about the guy that got pulled over back here. So yes, I'm sure there are studies that are going to show that. It's pretty brazen, I guess, to commit crimes in a neighborhood where you got police cars parked outside.
I have a follow-up to that. Has there been any studies done with regard to the obviousness of the lighting structures on the cars as a deterrent? Because now then, you really can't tell a police car from other cars till you're right there. With the old ones with the bulbs on top,
yeah,
you could tell from a mile away. So
yeah, the lighting, I think, as far as, we do have some traffic vehicles that don't have lights on top of it. They're lit interior, and I think that's more for Again, we know that there's people, it's important to catch the people that are driving like maniacs. I don't want them to see me 2 miles ahead and then stop their behavior till I'm gone and then continue. So there's that aspect of it, but we try to keep the cars lit up pretty well. But really, basically, I think to answer your question, the industry standard has been a more low-profile thing. It's hard to find a manufacturer of a light bar that makes a light bar that's going to be any more than about 2 inches tall. So I think that's just the nature of the industry.
I was just thinking, you gave the statistic that 30 minutes after you see the police car with somebody pulled. I would think that's the same way. You notice a police car, whether they've got somebody pulled over, immediately you try to do better compliance.
Well, I think they do once they realize I'm a policeman. I have that. It's just natural. I see a police car coming, I take my foot off the gas regardless of how fast I'm going. So I think that view does have an effect. But again, the industry standard is they don't make those big bulky light bars anymore. It's all more low profile, and let's use the LED and the other things that we can put in very small frames. So yeah, you don't see the big tall 1.5 foot tall light bars anymore.
There's the one part that you're trying to catch the people that are really breaking the law, but there's the other thing that you just keep honest people honest too.
Right.
I always thought when you had somebody pulled over, that meant I had smooth sailing for the next
30 minutes, you can drive like crazy.
Rethink that.
Okay.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, I had a question for you. So when I first got on the council and I was able to go on a tour, I got the impression, so correct me if I'm mistaken on this, that you had some vehicles maybe that are sitting out back that don't see very much use. They're maybe less desirable and people don't like them as much and they get used rarely. Am I mistaken on that?
That's true to an extent. And we've corrected that to a degree. And I think this when you have a fleet, and so everybody can just kind of pick the car they want to drive, that's what happens. You have a group of cars that were not great cars. They weren't, without getting a lot of minutia, they weren't designed very well to be police cars in the first place, at least in my opinion. And the guys really didn't care to drive them, so they drove all the other cars because they didn't have to drive them. Once we got to the point now where we had enough cars where we could assign cars to two officers at a time, now they're driving the car because that's their assigned car. However, those cars are on our rotation to be rotated out as the cars that we just got to replace them. And so I don't think you'll see that issue quite so much anymore, but those cars are not just going to auction, they're going to be recycled, and our SROs are going to use them, and a couple of our civilian employees are going to use them. So they're getting their benefit, but however, I will tell you this, the lack of use is what's enabled us creatively to add 5 additional cars to the fleet a couple of years ago. Because normally they would have been replaced, but they didn't have enough mileage on them to replace them, so that allowed us to increase our fleet by 5 cars that particular year. We didn't replace any, we just added them. And so that was a problem from the perspective of you ended up with a car that really wasn't a great police car. We're a little more cognizant about what we're purchasing now. We're trying to get cars that will serve our needs, yet serve the officers' needs as well. One of the issues that we have now is we have basically 3 different kinds of police cars. We have a sedan, which for me is a great car. I'm a small guy. I fit in it really well, and it's fast, and I like it. And then we have an SUV that's a little bit better. It's basically the equivalent of a civilian equivalent of a Ford Explorer. And the bigger guys can fit in it a little bit better, and now this year we actually did purchase one Expedition, so even a little bit larger, because even the big guys, I got some big guys, and they don't want to drive not that they don't like the sedan, but they can't get in and out of it very efficiently, and so they don't drive it. They need some other vehicles. So we're trying to take those things into account as we purchase those things. That makes it conducive for the officer to use the vehicle as well.
So if we were to get 2 brand new fancy cars, you don't think there would be potentially an issue where then you've got some that are older and people are not using them as much as they are?
No, because again, they would be assigned.
Okay.
We're to the point where we can assign officers to take the car. They're not just going to sit there because there's another one I can take. So, yeah.
So there's a reason you stick me in a sedan when I do ride-alongs.
They don't want you to come back.
To tell you I need to buy some bigger
Now that we've
vehicles.
opened up this can of worms. There are four police cars sitting out in the long-term parking on the west side of the airport. What are those vehicles used?
Those are old patrol vehicles that we have recycled, that we've kept in the fleet that we use for emergency vehicle operations training. So rather than take our brand new police cars out and put them through the paces and beat them up and beat the tires, we use an old car to do that. We're also going to take 2 more of our cars this year to add to those cars out there and teach a maneuver that's called a pit maneuver. We're going to weld some fender bumpers on them so that they can actually learn the technique to pit a car and not damage them. So we're recycling and getting as much use as possible as we can out of the vehicles and making them last as long as possible. Those cars out there are Crown Vics that are probably 2007 or 2008 vehicles. So.
Well, I know other cities do this, and Garden City, Kansas is one specifically that I'm aware of, is that they will park an empty cruiser in certain areas entering a city or in a school zone, make them somewhat visible so it slows the traffic down. Is there some way that we could look at doing something like that in the future with some of these cars that are close to being what you call recycled? Or is there benefit there? It sure slows me down going to Garden City from the airport.
Well, I certainly think that's a possibility. It's not one that we've particularly explored in the past, but now that you bring it up, I think that's something that we could certainly examine. And that would absolutely be, rather than having it sit out at the airport, we could definitely, if that's, again, it's the only downside, and it's not a huge downside, is it obviously takes people to get that car to where it needs to be and leave it and then pick it up.
I understand.
And we've had a speed reader board in the past, and we'll have volunteers that will go take it out, and the officers are supposed to pick it up, and then they get tied up and the thing sits out there all night or 2 or 3 days and the battery runs down on it. So it just becomes more of a time-consuming issue than a help at times, but that's certainly something that we could look at.
Okay, thanks. I think we ought to do it.
Right now we're just talking about
right now I'm just talking about the police cars. Okay. I still have to talk to you about our shooting simulator. If that's all right.
Okay, sounds like...
I thought you were going to use Michael for that, too.
Careful what you ask for.
All right, the other item that we would like to purchase with this money, if it was authorized, would be a shooting simulator. This is an item of equipment that we've identified in the past as being a beneficial tool for the department. There could potentially be some cost savings, but I don't know exactly. I don't look at it so much from the cost savings perspective as I do the training perspective. What it is it allows us to go and conduct simulations and training inside in the department on scenarios that are real life based, as opposed to standing out at the range. We try to incorporate as much real life training, realistic training as we possibly can, but ultimately you're still shooting at a paper target. When you're up at the range. We have certain qualifications that are mandatory each year. We conduct those. We do some other training. We do some active shooter training, even though we're not using live firearms to conduct that type of training. We're using simunitions. The downside of that is that we have to go find a place to conduct that training. We can conduct some of those scenarios, that active shooter training and things like that, right in our own training room with this simulator. We can actually go out and film the schools that we work in and conduct a scenario so that when we go to that school, if we were to have to go to that school, we've already been there basically. You can't get much better training than that. The companies that provide these simulators also stay on top of different topics, different things that are issues that are occurring in the world, and provide updated scenarios on about a quarterly basis, so that we can train up to the most up-to-date and most practical, realistic, tactical training that's available to us. One of the other things that's available, or that it provides to us, is if we have somebody who's having an issue out on the range, who's having some difficulty in firearms, rather than go out on the range and shoot live ammunition that costs money, we can conduct a good majority of that training right in our training room. And once that's completed, then take them up to the range just to conduct the qualification. So we can save some money in ammunition in that way. We also have the availability for our officers to conduct monthly training. We try to do that anyway, but sometimes the weather's inclement and we're not able to get to the range. Again, having the ability to have the simulator would allow us to do those things regardless and maintain those skills. As you know, firearms is probably one of the highest liability things that we do. Although we don't use them often, when we do, you can guarantee there's going to be a lawsuit. And so it's imperative that we make sure our training's spot on and that we're doing the right things, and that, again, the scenarios years ago it always used to be just a shoot, don't shoot scenario, which is important. However, now these are more tactical. There's some interactive portions to it. You can combine not only just the firearms portion of the scenario, but you can mold it into defensive tactics, to arrest techniques. And there actually is a couple of these that actually do have the capability. They can be expanded to a driving simulator as well. So we can basically incorporate the whole call, from arriving at the scene in the car to engaging a suspect and just getting really as close to being the real thing as possible. One of the other benefits to us would be typically, and we just started our most recent Citizens Police Academy. One of the things we try to teach them is what we do, and one of the sections is we actually do go to the range. However, we can teach those scenarios, and people get an opportunity to actually see what we encounter in a simulator setting in our training room. We think that would be a great benefit to help people understand exactly what it is we do from a community relations perspective.
The nice thing about the scenarios too is that the screen actually reacts. If you miss, it will show you where you miss, and it'll show you where your bullet went, and the bad guy will still keep coming at you until you use either, it has a taser adaptation, it has a handgun, it has a rifle, it has pepper spray, it has a baton. So any use of force, the screen will react according to what the officer does. And there's also a video camera that will show if the officer's moving or seeking cover or what they're doing. Because a lot of times you don't realize what you're doing under stress, so it'll benefit the officer that way as well. So it does a lot of things. The companies also send software upgrades usually every 3 to 6 months, so it's a constant feed of software for the simulator.
It just sounds expensive.
It is. It's $60,000. But I think, again, from the perspective, if it saves us one lawsuit, I think we've made our money back. Again, I just think that type of training is so critical for what we do. We entrust our officers to make life and death decisions in a split second, and they know that they're going to do that, and they're going to be judged on it later on for years by people who had all kinds of time and no training to do that. And I think if we don't provide them the training, we're doing them a disservice, and we're doing our community a disservice, because we want them to make the right decisions. Absolutely.
Okay, so I have a question from Orr, and then Adamson, and then Brown.
Are these full virtual reality? Are is the officer wearing a helmet, or are they just seeing?
No, they're watching it on a screen. It's a video screen. They're not wearing the virtual goggles.
So is it set up so that only one officer, or can it be multiple officers doing the same?
I'm going to defer to Captain Shy on that.
Yeah, you can set up to where 2 officers can run it at the same time, and so there could be one officer that uses a taser and one that has their handgun out. So it's set up that way for multiple officers.
Well, you mentioned filming schools. I can't see a single officer. Well, I guess there would be cases, but in most cases it'd be preferential to have 2 officers clearing a hall in the rooms.
Yeah.
Such. So.
And so they can move around too. One can be closer, one can be further back, and we've had them come in, and the plan is if you were to approve it, to have them come back in. And so if you guys wanted to come over and demo it, we'd have a demo day that you could actually come and demo it yourselves to see how effective the training is. So.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what type of vehicles are you looking to purchase?
They would be just like what we're purchasing now. We would probably purchase
or the Explorers.
Well, the cost is equivalent, so we would just decide which we would have the need for. The cost of the vehicle itself is almost identical, the Taurus versus the Explorer. Okay. We wouldn't buy an Expedition. And then the equipment is almost identical as well. Okay. That goes inside. So it's just a matter of deciding what our needs are.
Do you have any plans at present to dip into your reserves additionally this year at the present time?
The only other issues that we've talked to the mayor and Joyce about is purchase of some evidence lockers to replace our evidence lockers. And then also we did have one vehicle that was totaled, and the insurance company only gave us $14,000 for the vehicle. And so the additional $16,000 to purchase a replacement vehicle. Those are the only other issues that we're looking at that we've already talked about for our reserves.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman.
Okay, thanks. Maybe that might have started to answer my question, but since I'm the newest one on the council and I haven't sat through many years of budget meetings like everybody else has, I guess a question I have is why we would be deciding this now instead of waiting until the budget meetings to see what other things maybe the police department needs from the Capitol. I don't know. I'm just curious. What?
Good point.
Well, I guess my response to that is I can't answer it for you, but this was a line item that's set aside in this budget year. If we wait until the next budget year, it may not be there. Depending on what you decide your needs are, I guess. Well, I'm asking you to decide our needs are important this year, as opposed to waiting until next year. Also, again, the cost increases the longer we wait, the more they increase. That's my perspective on it.
That's a good point.
Thanks.
Is there any ongoing maintenance fees or subscription costs with the simulator?
With the simulator, the software's free. If we choose to do any upgrades, then there would be down the road. But essentially, when you purchase it, one system comes with a 2-year warranty that covers everything. And then you're looking at additional costs, maybe 7 years down the road for an upgrade, if you choose to do that.
They're sending the updates just as part of the package price.
Right. Yeah, two of the 3 systems that we look at do that for the lifetime of the system. They provide the free software. They also provide the training for it too, to train our officers how to do it. But they both, 2 of the 3 companies provide a lot of different avenues. Like I said, like Major said, one of them actually has a driving simulator that's connected directly to the shooting simulator. So that's an avenue that could be explored later down the road.
Okay.
Another question.
Okay.
Which would you want more if you could only have one, vehicles or shooting simulator?
If I could only have one, I would probably say the shooting simulator. I think the car per officer program is important. However, I've really come to believe that the training aspect, that the training things that the simulator would provide to us is critical.
Okay. I'll direct them to bring them to our council meeting for approval of these, purchase of these, and go from there, if you're okay with that. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming, have you looked at any other optional companies for providing the shooter simulator?
So,
yeah, there's essentially 4 companies that provide these. One is what they used to, I mean, if you have any knowledge, it used to be called the FAT system, but they've primarily gone to the military applications. And so the other 3 companies, we've been in contact. Their prices are similar. There is one company that's a little more expensive and not nearly their customer services, and they didn't want to bring a simulator here for us to evaluate. If we wanted to see it, we had to go to Salt Lake to see it. The other 2 were more than willing and have been here in the past and are willing to come back again. So really it's about a 4-company option, and the prices are, for where we're looking at, relatively similar.
But Apple or something doesn't do anything like Unique. I saw one in Hawaii that was a little scary doing it. I mean,
there are some like mom and pop places out there, but then you fall into the pitfall of the not having the most current up-to-date scenarios of what's going on in the country, and that's what these 3 companies do provide, all of that that we've researched. So.
Okay, all right. We'll go ahead and why don't you bring it to us for a council meeting, and we'll make a decision there.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, before we move to agenda item number 10, why don't we take a break?
Amen.
And then we'll be back in, 5 to 10 minutes.
There's 2 of the 3 companies that we looked at. I printed off some information on what they do. And, it's Milo and TI.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us after the break. We'll go ahead and continue with agenda item number 10, East Bench Recreation Management Zone, BLM, proposed trail system. Bureau of Land Management, BLM representatives, Parks and Recreation Department staff, and Public Works staff will be present to review a proposed trail system in the East Bench Recreation Management Zone. Staff is also seeking council's input and direction regarding the proposed trail to be known as Pioneer Ridge Trail System. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is the deal here? You're not behind the table.
I thought Lance and Merrill were coming.
Oh, I thought you didn't want to speak.
I thought, well, we got a great relationship going here. We're not even going to sit at the same table.
This is a collaborative effort.
That's right, obviously.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Council and Mayor. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Bruce Olenek, and I am not acting in the capacity of the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality Mayor. I hate to contradict you, but
I know, I realize
I am
that
a proud Pocatello citizen this morning. So, and what I have to present to you today is both exciting and easy. It's relatively straightforward. I'm an outdoor enthusiast. I love this area. I've been here for 30 years. Came here for graduate school at Idaho State, met my wife, and never left. And I love this part of the state. And I spend a lot of time outside and enjoying what I think is an unbelievable opportunity and a recreational opportunity for our community. I'm also a volunteer for the city. For those of you that don't know, I don't know if you've ever seen the Pocatello Creek Trail Map Systems. I create all this and donate it back to the city and build the signs and erect the signs that you see at those city entrances with the Forest Service as well as BLM. So I'm very passionate about this. And another side of this is one thing that I've been looking at is trying to find uses for orphan pieces of federal land that are around Pocatello and working with our federal partners, trying to find ways to better manage that and also create opportunities for our community to utilize these little parcels and postage stamp pieces of land around Pocatello. And so today's purpose is really just to ask for assistance from you to develop and maintain a trailhead on city property to have access to federal land behind. And so that's really what I'm here for. So to give you a little bit of background, in your packet as well as up here on the screen, I just put together a couple exhibits so you can orientate yourself to what we're talking about here. The East Bench Recreation Management Zone sits right above Highland. And so in that map that you see, Highland sits off on the left-hand side of the map here, and the Satterfield development that's currently going on above Highland is in that big white spot that you see. And then East Chubbuck Road runs along the top edge of that left-hand side of that map, and that connects over to the Wellness Center. Above Highland, where your blue water tank is, and actually that's on BLM land, is an area of about 1,300 acres that is relatively the same size as City Creek on the western bench of Pocatello. And it's this parcel of land that is orphaned and not really used for anything other than people within the Highland area and throughout Pocatello use it to get up there and hike, as well as some limited motorized use. And so the thought was, working with BLM, is how can we make this a more jeweled aspect of our public lands around the city of Pocatello. As you may know, it abuts many city property parcels as well as subdivisions, so its accessibility to members of the public is very real. In fact, there are very few cities that can boast a parcel of federal land of 1,300 acres right up against city property that allow for public access and allow people to be able to use that. So again, it's a very unique property. The goals of creating this trail system on BLM land is to provide for about 20 to 30 miles of hiking trails, of horseback riding trails, mountain bike trails, a single track and double track, and limited ATV use. The other attribute to this is because it is connected, and this trailhead up in the upper northwest quadrant of the BLM land, we have a verbal agreement with Ryan Satterfield to access that portion of the property, and that's just to get us started. And by the way, I'm working with BLM. They had something come up today. They're not here today, and I don't speak for BLM either, but I work very closely with them to develop the plans for this sort of thing. So this trailhead right here connects all the way down via the Greenway to the Wellness Center. And why is that important? Well, people who love using the fairgrounds, and particularly our horseback riders that can actually stay overnight at the fairgrounds, there's overnight accommodations. They can conduct events up there, whether it be rodeo or whether it be other horse events, and they can get on their horse and actually ride up to federal land and spend time in off hours of their event and enjoy federal property right from the city itself. And again, there's not very many cities in the country that can boast that kind of connectivity. So that was the original impetus of this, was to allow horseback riding, hiking, and mountain biking to exit from the Wellness Center, which is a fabulous facility in our community, to a larger parcel of land. The other thing the other attribute of this is that we now have, you guys I'm sure are fully aware of, we have a mountain bike racing team that's a conglomeration of all three high schools, and it's growing exponentially, called the Pocatello Pioneers. And this mountain bike racing team wants to use this as their home racing course as well. And we have already had people from both the National Mountain Bike Racing Team Association as well as our state Mountain Bike Association come out and take a look at this, and they were in awe. They said, we can see this being the state championships here, because again, no other city in the state has this kind of opportunity that we have here staring us in the face. And then finally, to have people from our subdivisions, both in Highland and in Monte Vista, be able to, again, if you put on your long-term vision here, to be able to walk up on trails through ravines on city property that isn't usually utilized for anything else, and access a trail system right from the city itself. So what we're exploring right now is taking a look at those parcels of city property, and they are in orange on your map, these long ravines that are kind of parceled out from the subdivisions, and they're unbuildable, really, to be utilized for foot traffic or bike traffic to get up into the BLM property. But one of the aspects of the environmental assessment, and by the way, BLM is putting together, we're working together on putting together a public accessible assessment that puts all this in perspective, and there'll be 3 alternatives presented in that assessment. The first one being the one you have in front of you. It's both a foot traffic, bike traffic, and limited motorized traffic option, and that's the preferred option. The second option would be making this just purely a non-motorized trail system. And then finally, the third option would be to have no action whatsoever, just keep it the way it is. And so that'll be coming out in the coming months, but the reason why I'm here in front of you is because to explore fully those options, we'd like to know what the relationship is with the city and what the city can do to help make this a reality as well. And so that's the purpose of today's visit. And so again, exploring some of those city properties for the preferred alternative A, at least what we're drafting into the assessment, is to provide some sort of limited motorized activity from a parcel of the old landfill that the city owns on the south end of that larger BLM parcel up there. Now, this particular parcel of land, and I'm going to put on a DEQ hat now very quickly, this is the old Alameda landfill, and there is a remedial action on that site, and there's long-term monitoring going on that site. The city has done an amazing job taking care of that. In fact, talking with Arlen just now, he's really, saying, hey, we need to maintain that. They want to protect that area up until 2027 to make sure that everything is held in place. And from a DEQ standpoint, we support that 100%. Any activity cannot damage or have any alterations of the cap that is protecting that old landfill. That landfill is responding amazingly well. And so again, whatever you're doing, and hearing that from Arlen, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to hear, to maintain the protectiveness of that remedial action. But also we're in the business of trying to take these old, what we'll call a brownfield site, these sites that are blighted, and get them back into production. Right. And we just put one into production up in Coeur d'Alene, where we made an old landfill a golf course. And so I don't want to take Arlen's passion of protecting that area away, because we really support that, but we will also explore opportunities to begin using that land or portions of the land that aren't affected by the landfill and bring it back into the community domain and make it available for the community in a positive way. So the proposed activity is looking at perhaps having a limited motorized access and parking area on the southern border of this to allow access. And when I say limited ATV, the red section up on that you see on your map really focus and curtail the ability of ATVs to just go everywhere. It's really, there's a beautiful lookout up there, and it would allow people who have razors or motorcycles to go up here in a controlled fashion. It wouldn't be a free-for-all or an ATV racing course at all. And it would require many users coming together, horseback riders, mountain bikers, hikers, and ATV users to come together, similar to what we do at City Creek, to pull on the rope together and manage that with the BLM. And I'm very confident of that. And one of the other things I wanted to point out, and on your syllabus here, I did pull out a section of our Valley, our vision of what the city of Pocatello's desires are for this very scenario. And the italicized words here are very important. And the city, their desires is they wish to promote the acquisition, development, and maintenance of trailheads and interconnectivity of trails and paths within the community and with adjacent systems of BLM land and U.S. Forest Service lands. And so this fits right into the vision of where the city has documented where they'd like to go for the future. And so really the long-term plan, at least my desire, would be to have the city be a partner in this, but then also there'd be really limited, in my opinion, limited infrastructure or investment by the city to make this occur. And John and Lance can answer that more appropriately, but that would be my desire, would be really just be a pass-through to get to the BLM property and not require, maintenance or long-term, issues with the running of that facility. So it would really be BLM's gig to control that. So that's it kind of in a nutshell, but one other thing I wanted to point out to you folks, and that is on the next map that you have in front of you. BLM and I have been also talking about the other orphan pieces of property surrounding Pocatello. And one of the prime ones that they're wanting to manage better is the Camelback piece, Camelback Mountain piece, sandwiched in between Buckskin and Pocatello Creek. And they already have a pretty good infrastructure around the Black Rock area, down to Indian Mountain, and then over to Gibson and Slate Mountain. And you notice the dotted line connects Pioneer Ridge, or what we're calling Pioneer Ridge, to City Creek. My ultimate vision is to create an outdoor rec area horseshoeing the entire city of Pocatello on the ridge tops and on the mountains around the city itself. Why is that important? Well, we talk a lot about bringing in more fast food restaurants or other economic viable businesses, and that's great. That's awesome. But they're small little building blocks. Advertising Pocatello as an outdoor recreation center similar to Park City or Eagle, Colorado, if you're familiar with Eagle. They were a little town just the same size as Pocatello, struggling and trying to go from a mining heritage to something different. They did this in connecting all these little parcels of land, and now they are the mecca for trail riding and outdoor recreation in the state of Colorado. So it's where everybody goes for state championships and all kinds of things. So this is a very similar scenario unfolding in front of us. So my bottom line, folks, is just asking you to be a champion for something like this and have a long-term vision of seeing how we could really sell Pocatello in a way that we probably never even had thought about before, and that's sustainable and really can make a huge impact for this city. So anyway, that's it.
Just in your repertoire references, I was talking to a friend of mine on Saturday night, and they'd been skiing in Canada, and twice while they were in Canada, they met couples who go south in the winter but spend 3 or 4 days coming and going in Pocatello just to ride our trails. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they weren't up there trying to find people. These people found them. Right. Found out they were from Pocatello and volunteered. What a great place we have for riding trails.
We do. And it's a double-edged sword because I love spending time on these trails, and I don't want anybody else here. But to have a long-term vision to managing these well is the appropriate response rather than to let them go crazy and try to manage themselves. It just doesn't work very well, and you can probably speak to that. Having a long-term vision and a plan, I think, is very powerful. And from an economic standpoint, incredibly powerful. And the former mayor of the city of Eagle, Colorado, talking to him on the phone, said, I'll come out to Pocatello if I need to tell folks, because he was staunchly against this when this started out, and this was back in the mid-90s, and he got flipped. The BLM said, hey, you know, we need to move in a direction here. We got to start managing these lands, or we're going to put up fences around here, because they were getting torn up and what have you. And they started creating an alliance amongst the user groups, and again, that's BLM, Forest Service, horseback riders, ATVs, and they created this alliance, and Eagle exploded. It just, once they started putting all these pieces together, went, wow, this is really cool. Now this guy travels the world talking about what they did in Eagle, and so anyway, so that's the vision. I know the Pocatello Pioneers, they're always pushing me saying, where are we at on this plan? But this is the first step of the plan. It's really to get the city engaged with our federal partners and start developing a long-term vision here.
So starting out, how many access points from the city do you see that are available right now that can go forward?
Great question. So let's go back. So most of the people who access these areas do so coming right out of Highland. There's small little access points all along this western boundary, and those are foot traffic and bike traffic. Right. And then up in this northwest corner, that's the first official kind of if you will, trailhead that we've worked with the developer up here to allow some sort of access. I'm actually going to go back to Ryan and sit down with him saying, if this goes long term, it might be in your best interest to develop a park trailhead up here as part of his subdivision to allow this type of activity to occur. And that, what a selling point, I think. I mean, to create this interface between the city and federal land there. And then finally, that southern piece right here is really not used at all right now. for access, because this entire area is fenced to protect the landfill. So
you're probably looking at the landfill and 2 other non-motorized points.
Well,
eventually.
And I believe Ridgewood is a private road.
Correct.
And
correct.
Gaining access there would take the county.
It is private, but once you hit Ridgewood up on top in the Summit neighborhood, it's public.
Right.
So the city, see this right here, the city owns these streets right here, but from this little curve down, that's private. But another access point is the stormwater catch basins that the city owns on that southern boundary there. So full disclosure, I live right here on one of those cul-de-sacs, so I know this area really well. And again, I do mapping, so I map trails and access points not only for City Creek, but here and for the forest down on Scout Mountain. So I pay attention to these sort of things and just volunteer my time that way to help them out. So.
I think it's a great idea. I love it.
Well, and I think we've had those conversations even in the past when we looked at those washes or valleys that we maintained ownership of, that they were access points to federal land. So we've had those. I think we've already had those discussions and realized that there was maybe some use for that.
Right. I guess what I'm proposing here is that we have some synergy, and I'm going to be an advocate, and if I can get the city council, 1, 2, 3, 4 of you to be advocates, and our federal partners, that would be awesome.
And private partners, don't be afraid to talk to developers about.
I'm not.
I was going to pass something along that, that's how we ended up with the City Creek property. We got that from private holders. In fact, the guy that was instrumental in that, Don Hammond, passed away just a couple of days ago, and he was the guy that made that happen for us. He was in a group of 5 or 6 people that owned a bunch of property over there, and Don's the guy that really made that happen. And I think we need to look at those kind of opportunities, even if they're 10 or 20 years out, with private property up there as well, for a parking spot or an access point. Don't be afraid to approach it, because a lot of people are willing to do that if they're asked, I think.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah, my plan is to. So I have started a Pocatello Trail Alliance, which concludes the Port of Wellness organization, as well as, like I mentioned, the federal partners and all. And I also sit on Pedal Fest and help put that race on here in the summertime. And so there's a lot of trail users out there. The ultra marathoners, they're a crazy bunch, but they love this idea. The more, in fact, they're looking at that whole 125-mile radius around Pocatello and salivating, and I'm like, are you kidding me? And they want to run it. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunity there, and so the more we can create this alliance and pull on the rope together, the better. And that includes you guys too. It really does.
And from your job at DEQ, would you feel like there are some opportunities to utilize our land at the landfill without disrupting the project?
No question. Yeah. Clearly, when I hear Arlen speak, I'm a full supporter of his protectiveness of that. Any activity up there cannot damage the cap. It just can't. And but long-term wise, the groundwater has responded, and the values are going down. And it's exactly the scenario you want to see. And so we would fully support any type of long-term development. If that included, at first maybe allowing access to BLM, but then eventually have a build-out plan for that's compatible with that action. You bet. I mean, in fact, there might be money available to go do some of those kind of things. We have a Brownsfield program that we utilize to do this very thing. We did it with the old Blackfoot City landfill that the county inherited from the city of Blackfoot, that is now part of the fairgrounds there. And we dumped about $1.5 million into that, did all the monitoring for them, did all the sampling, and then told them at the end, here's your management decisions you need to make based on these types of this type of information. So it's a really positive relationship. And so, yeah, I would support it, but I want to make sure that it's done right.
Great.
Councilman Gray?
You mentioned 2027. What is the significance of that date?
So the remedial action was completed in 1997 up there, and all the wells were put in and the cap was completed. And so state law requires that closed landfills are required to monitor for at least 30 years. That's the verbiage in state law. So Arlen's taking that out to 2027. So that's when you start looking at when the city can back away potentially from monitoring that site, depending on what the values are. So, and that's that's it. I mean, there isn't a long laundry list of requirements, particularly back then, we didn't do that. So there's only 2 requirements associated with that property, and that is monitor until at least 2027, and don't drive full-size vehicles or damage the cap on top of that landfill, and that's it.
Sounds good. Councilwoman.
Other than just saying, it's awesome, I love it, what more can we do? I mean, if you're looking for support from the city, what
Again,
do you need our help with?
Help sharing the vision. I mean, because, we have so many different visions out there, and that's good, but we just need help trying to say that this is where we're going. And if we can get the city to advocate, with our federal partners. And also, if you've noticed, Councilman brought up Ridgewood. Well, Ridgewood is a private road, but that gully right there is mixed ownership, but the city does have some ownership there, and there's a gully just north of there. The city has the entire ownership from that parcel of land all the way down to Summit or Satterfield?
Satterfield Drive.
Yeah. And so, again, imagine that you're at the Boy Scout Center, and you can just get out from there and start walking up and go up into the mountains from the city, from Sister City Park and what have you. So, yeah, so there's some long-term vision that has to be put together. So in the future, if I come back and saying, how about this plan? I'd be looking for advocacy. So.
Can I speak to that for a minute?
No.
Hannah Sanger, Science Environment Division Manager. Just a conversation that happened this week with Utah State University Landscape Architecture Program and their urban planning is they are interested in coming in this fall to sort of work on the Portneuf River Vision Plan, but they want to look east and west as well, so west bench to east bench, and really help do the next phase of thinking about land use planning with the river and bringing in an entire class of students to do drawings and pull together a lot of this planning, which would tie into what Bruce is doing. So there is an opportunity. We'll have a minimal city match, which I will talk to you about later, involved with that, but a pretty small amount for getting that vision. So if you are interested, that is an opportunity this fall to really lay out this vision from peak to peak, east to west.
Sounds good. Councilman Bray.
I was just going to comment for the long-term vision. I think those destination points should be big enough that horses could be trucked up there, because I can see the day when they can't ride from the fairgrounds up to
possible. That's a great feedback.
I know what horses can bring to a neighborhood and what people don't want in their neighborhood.
Right. Well, right now, the Greenway is designed to have horse traffic as well as foot traffic on it. That's the plan. And but yeah, that's great feedback as well.
Because they could put their horse in a trailer and truck them up and have the whole day.
It does require larger parking lots. I mean, it's... But one other point I want to springboard off of what Hannah said is that, for years we've been trying to connect the Greenway, and we've been running that north to south, right? And that's what we've been trying to do. This looks at it from a different perspective. Picture yourself sitting in the middle of Pocatello and going out rather than north to south. And it's a totally different way of viewing life here in the city. And so if we can utilize these ravines and actually I think it would also help us in long-term management of those areas as well, having people up there utilizing and then watching out for them. So again, it's that connectivity and then using the horseshoe around Pocatello as the north to south connections rather than trying to piece that out. That's a great endeavor to do in the city, and hopefully we'll accomplish that someday. But this is another way to look at it. So.
Awesome.
I like the idea, especially the multi-use motorized part of that. But I see is that coming up through the old dump right now? Is that the access?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Okay. Now here's why I'm saying this, okay? This, not the dump so much, but the ATV side of it. Believe it or not, everyone in this room will someday be as old as Councilman Moore and Councilman Johnston. Oh no. And some of us have been in our past, like Stud Clark over here, that has rafted and bicycled.
I don't know if you've ever been quite like me.
I doubt he spent as much time on horseback as I have.
True story.
But there is a reason that some of us are riding ATVs now. And that's possibly because we ran too much, we horseback too much, and we're just a bunch of broke down old cowboy people that.
Could I springboard on what you said?
Putting those red lines in.
I think he's trying to convince you to put a wheelchair around.
Well,
you might have to. I mean, but it will be motorized.
I don't mean to get personal here, but and again, I'm going to let BLM do it. I'm going to give them alternatives. But my wife was stricken with MS and is in a wheelchair, and we have a razor, and she was an avid backpacker, and that's how she gets up into the hills now. And we occasionally go up here, and we bring some cheese and wine and look out over the beautiful city of Pocatello, and that's what we do. I'd love to see that, and one of my passions is to keep that going. Are there places where it should be non-motorized? You bet. Can we do it in both ways? You bet. And so that's my goal, is to create these multi-user systems up here, if we can, to allow great community access.
Well, so I suggest that because we do ride the Black Rock area occasionally, and tie that in. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. You've got a great resource in Bruce. He has a lot of ties to the different agencies involved. He has built up a lot of goodwill in the various communities that need to come together. So to kind of hitch our wagon to Bruce, he's driving a lot of this for free, and has put in countless hours volunteering to bring everybody together, guide them around, put the maps together, truth on the ground. I mean, if I had to pay a staff member to do that, it would be a half-time job. So one of the resources we need to harness is Bruce's enthusiasm.
I was in a meeting in Soda a couple weeks ago, and Bruce was there, and I thought Julie and I would be riding home with a different conversation, and we spent the entire time talking about this. So she was excited.
Oh, good. Good. I corralled him after this meeting with CCOG and asked him if he can. I was greasing the skids, all right? I'll be honest.
For me, this is a no-brainer.
Sure. We have one more question.
So, this is more of a comment, but if we determine the access points, then if you're going to have races and stuff like that, we can gain control of permitting it for special uses, can't we?
I would assume so.
You know, I mean, I think that's probably designed because you won't want four-wheelers running up there the same day you're having bike races or runner races, or, we'd have to have it where you come in like a city park and you gain control of the access points for that time.
Yeah. We have a prototype for that in the way we manage City Creek. We already allow events up there. They pay a fee. They turn in a travel plan, safety plan, a remedial action plan if they have any impacts. And
the only caution I would throw out is that you wouldn't want an event to have to go through all that for the city as well as BLM. And so you'd have to coordinate that effort. Because indeed, you might be the gatekeeper here, but most of the event would occur on outside of the city property. So, but that's a great idea, I think. I
think that's doable, though. It's just a matter of coordinating that with the BLM. Right. But I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
We probably don't want a four-wheeler race and.
No. Might be interesting to watch if you had a running race and a four-wheeler race going on at the same time.
Like the low jack.
We're all in, I think. Okay, it sounds like we're all in. I think it's a great project, and it sounds like you've got some buy-in here, so run with it.
Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 11, future infrastructure project discussion. This time has been set aside for City Council to review, discuss, and rank infrastructure projects proposed by City of Pocatello departments. So we asked the departments a few months ago to give us some input on what was important to them. Going into the budgeting season, we thought it would be a good idea to find out if what is important to them is the same thing that's important to the council, and see if you have ranked any, and if what your desires are as they plan their budget moving forward.
I want to go to lunch, so I just want to approve them all.
Approve them? They're all approved? Okay.
It's your job to figure out how to pay for it.
That's right. That's right. Really, I wanted to, if there was anything that popped out into council's mind, is what I really wanted to make sure that a department would be able to plan for that, other than what they're already planning. They've already got their plans to move forward with the different projects, but these are some of the special projects that were a little over and above. And so,
well, one of the things I would put on it, because I go through this several times a day, is the Center Street underpass. That's crumbling. It's a huge infrastructure issue for us. And it's whether we can't afford to do it, but it's got to be a priority that we stress every time we're in place to look for funding, because we've got to get that moving. You drive through the underpass, you see 3 feet of concrete that's fallen off. And it makes you very aware that next time it could be 10 or 15 feet of concrete that falls off. So, I know it's scheduled out for long, but we've got to find a fast track at moving that forward.
Tom Kirkman, Jeff Mansfield, and Beardy Casile. Jeff can kind of give you a little bit of an update on that. That's one of our federal aid projects, and where we're moving on that.
So we're just getting ready to negotiate the next phase of the contract on that, which would be our final design. And we've been meeting with the railroad. We're trying to get things figured out as far as the pedestrian bridge and different improvements with that facility. We've identified that as definitely one of our priorities to BDPO, and every chance we get, we try to get more money coming into that project.
I know that we were asked to put together a list for the lobbyist, and we had done that several months ago. I don't remember there ever being another request for like an updated list of things that we were doing this year, but that was why I made sure that everyone had a copy of our Public Works CIP. Now with the Center Street underpass, I believe that we put that on the lobbyist list because we could get it to a point of being ready to go and be constructed, so we would all be designed, but we hadn't been given a construction year yet. And talking to the state just yesterday, Melody had mentioned that there was a date on it now, and it's like 2025.
23 or something.
23,
yeah,
it's way out there. I haven't seen anything in writing, but she says that we do at least have a date for it.
Well, my perspective would be, if there is a national infrastructure thing, this is one of the hardest things to sell in terms of, it's harder to invest in repair than it is to invest in building out. And so I would think that if we could just keep that in the forefront, that's a vital part. Old Town is a substantial part of our equity, so to speak, in terms of our tax base. And if that goes down, it makes it much more difficult to keep Old Town moving. And we only have a few access points east-west across the railroad tracks, and that's something we just can't afford to go down.
Absolutely. We'll keep it on the top of our priorities.
So as we're waiting, 2023 seems to be a long ways away, though it'll be here tomorrow if we sit on it and wait. Is there anything we can be doing? Roger mentioned, you see chunks of concrete that fall off. Is there anything we can do in this fiscal year that we might be able to help prevent some of that and make that look aesthetically a lot better?
Absolutely. I think we have some opportunities with some excess reserves in the street department that we could go down there and do some cosmetic improvements. We've done a lot of patching of the sidewalks. We've upgraded some of the pumps, or the 2 pumps, and you've noticed that during our rain events, it seems to be working a lot better. Knock on wood. We've done some patchwork on the sidewalks, but the walls, both when you're coming in and coming out, the walls are looking pretty rough there. The hard part with that is you've got a lot of rusted rebar in there. You put a patch on that, and it's going to last for a year or 2, and then it's going to come back off. I think structurally, it's in pretty decent shape. It's just aesthetically unappealing. So we could definitely put our heads together and get something to make it at least give it a little more curb appeal.
And we've talked just this last week with BTPO about maybe splitting that up into different parts and looking at doing the structural and then doing the pedestrian and then maybe doing the pump station and maybe splitting those up into different groups, so we can explore that a little bit more.
Some of the snags that come with these federal aid projects is the funding and our match portion. And I think that's something that we can strive to do a little bit better moving forward, is as far as our street department fund, we start allocating more money towards those so that when those projects come around, we've got that match ready to go and we can have those projects on the shelf. You know, all the paperwork's done, we got the money already in a savings account, and we can go.
The last thing we want is to have them come to us and say, we want to move this project up by 2 years, and then we have to come back and say, sorry, we can't meet our match. We can't, you know, it's just going to have to wait. That's not the situation we want to be in. So
I was going to say, so before, a few months ago, we had discussions with the railroad because it's to their best interest that doesn't cave in too. And I know that there's some agreements that they own the top and we own the bottom or something. And when it comes to a federal aid project and stuff, I'm assuming that we're having those discussions with the railroad even now. I'm hoping anyway that we're having those continued discussions with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff and I just met with one of the regional vice presidents for the Northwest, and the meeting was focused mainly on the Bent Street overpass because that's the first project we've got going. But we've started that dialogue with the railroad. There is some gray area about who has ownership of the bridge portion of it. They basically feel like the deck's just there to hold their gravel. You know, it's not structural. So we're working through those battles right now.
Pull the deck out.
Imagine that.
It kind of depends on who you're talking to at Union Pacific, and you know, we're kind of doing what people do to us when we didn't like one answer, we just went above them and started to get some of the answers that we like.
Sounds good, Roger.
So it's going to take a lot to get a design for replacement. Are we working on design? Is that?
We are working on design currently.
Because, you know, that's always the critical point. To be shovel ready, you've got to tell the shovel where to dig and then what comes back in place.
And we have all of the money to finish up all of the design, but then that's what we were lacking for construction. We didn't have those funds, and that's why it ended up on our lobbyist list.
Okay, so the design is going forward right now.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think any critical project like that gets bumped up a couple of years, I would assume we'll find the match money to do that. I don't know that we've never not tried to do that. I mean, it's good to be planning ahead and putting it away, but if they were to bump that up, I think we.
And sometimes it's not necessarily the money. Sometimes the environmentals hold you up or the plan, or, so I think on our end we can probably do a little bit better job of getting them ready so we can just pull them off the shelf.
So any others that you had thought about or would like to start thinking about as you've read through the list?
One that I don't know if it's on here, but when I go over the Portneuf River on North Main Extension, I remember how that swamped out a few years ago. Maybe we ought to be looking at that as another critical need to elevate the road so that we don't get water across it there. That's probably us working with the state a little bit in that regard.
The nice thing, just a little bit of an update, we've been above flood stage for quite a while, and we're still probably a good 3 or 4 feet before it gets to the road, so just a little update, we're doing okay there. So.
But if it had rained like they said it was on our snow, we would have been there.
Exactly, so it's definitely good. We'll get it on the list.
I think the slides at Ross Park are a priority, as well as I'd really like to switch over the water system up at the golf course, Highland Golf Course.
I agree with that.
And I was just talking with the Parks Department about the slide, and that's one of those things, if we don't do something with it pretty soon, we're going to be faced with shutting it down. And I think, even though they talked about, the sales for the slide net, that would really hurt that whole project, that whole facility out there. I think it would be a whole different deal if the slide wasn't there.
No, Deirdre's been working on that. She's within a week of finishing up the design and everything on that.
Yeah, so we have just like a temporary fix to get us through this next season. Really, our consultant said we can't open up the slide without doing this retrofit, so I've been working on the structural calculations and working with Parks and Rec on that, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that and get that out the door. So that'll be ready to go. So I guess I'm really like our structural person here until next month, so I'll make sure that they're okay for the season, but they know that they need to be working on a replacement in the future for that structure, so. It's going to be, a minimum of 600,000, and that was just like the basic slide. It doesn't count, all of the other digging and whatnot, and the pump system that we'll have to do. Demo, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Refresh my memory, what the, isn't ITD having an open house coming up?
On Yellowstone.
They had it
right?
Tuesday night.
So they're going to redo that intersection. They're planning to redo that intersection in the next 3 to 5 years or less.
Well,
Which intersection? Well,
Alameda Yellowstone, is that the intersection?
Yellowstone, isn't that what the open house was about?
There were several that they had
Everything on Yellowstone.
Yeah, it was a corridor.
But I think that they've backed off on that Alameda Yellowstone intersection, and they can just do a lot of the improvements, by making a bunch of signal changes and things like that.
Yeah.
There'll be some raised medians. I think there's a lot of collisions there at Fred Meyer McDonald's.
It's kind of what we don't have any design drawings on Alameda Jefferson, right? Is this time?
They're almost complete. They're 75%.
I need a copy of those when you get them. I got people ask for. The other thing that I see here is that Tom and I had some discussions about right-of-ways. I see that pole line's on here, Hawthorne on here.
Yeah, I inundated you with a lot of them, so.
Well, but you and I had the discussion about trying to put money aside somehow or something to be able to widen those roads, because the pole line initially that we pulled that money back from, I believe, was to take that down to 1 lane each way with a
road diet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And nobody in Idaho knows how to use a road diet. I'm sorry, it's always to wait till the last minute to get there, and then it's kind of like a 30 to a 45 degree angle with the back end of the vehicle sticking into the.
And I think going into that with the road diet, that was kind of a short-term solution to address some collision problems. It really was, we were just trying to basically band-aid.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be on this list anymore as this year-old list, but we took the money that was in that federal aid project and spent it on the Benton and South 2nd intersection project, because that one needed more money. So the pole line project that we were going to have, the diet's no longer a diet. But, we're right, we really need to set money aside to purchase right away. I mean, it's Jefferson, it's Hawthorne, it's pole line.
That's the third one. So
well, and there's been talk in the past about an east side belt route, and depending on how the growth of the valley goes, if you want to go to the wellness center, you get off at South Valley, you take, this west.
Kind of like the Bangerter Highway there in Salt Lake area.
It ties into Olympus. So.
Well, that's fine. It's like Councilman Moore said, if it's a priority, we always seem to be able to come up with the money, but when we do that, it seems like it goes up 2 or 3 times when we have to do it last minute. So I think any time that we can start planning for the future, it surely will probably be a different council, at least for a few of us by then. But I think we ought to be. We're planning a trail based on what we just had here, and that's a great idea. I think it's time to start looking at opportunities to plan for the future on some of these roads.
Agreed.
Especially with things I'm hearing out in the street and the wind on potential. So I don't want to discuss those here.
Councilman Bray?
One of the things that I looked at too was if there's a difference in between what our priorities are as a city because of what we can fund and what our priorities might be if we were able to access some federal funding. A couple infrastructure needs that I think would really help us are, one, if we could get you guys, if we could contract out street applications so we catch up faster, and like we get a year ahead of where we would be, because that makes it to where we've gained a lot of ground. Second one would be in terms of the like water department, sewer department, there's some reworking that needs to be done. There's an annual maintenance. If we could do something similar in those departments, if we could recoat water lines, if we could contract somebody to do it so it's not all on us, but it just would make our life get out ahead of us better.
Catch us up a little bit.
Yeah. So those are the type of things that I think there's what we have to address immediately as city, but if we can get ahead in infrastructure stuff, some of that stuff would be out the door right away. We say, we need these pipes redone, we need this redone, we need this street, and we could contract probably those services.
I think that's a great idea, because that's kind of where we want to get, at least speaking of the street department end, is we want to become a maintenance department where we're maintaining nice stuff, not rebuilding it all the time. So I couldn't agree more.
And the weather, if our streets are sealed a little bit better, then the water doesn't get down in the winter and make the potholes like they are.
Exactly.
So.
What about like stormwater? We've had some discussion on the stormwater ponds and stuff. Should we have them plan some extra money for stormwater retention and things, or at least bring that forward in the budgeting process?
Well, it's critical, but again, we've got to come up with a way to pay for it on an ongoing basis. So it's not these huge expenses because it's an HOA that hasn't taken care of it or it hasn't been maintained, and then 5 or 10 years out, we've got to go in and excavate it and redo it. I mean, before we can, I mean, I don't know the answer. I mean, we've got to come up with a plan of how to address it before we just start throwing money at it. I think we've got to have a plan. We've got to have a strategic plan on how we're going to address stormwater. And I mean, we have one. Here comes Hannah again, but thank you.
Way to go.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a serious thing. It needs to be done. But we've either got to stop turning these over to HOAs, or we've got to come up with, we've got to lobby somebody.
We had stopped.
So at the next study session, we'll come back to council with some proposals on various ways to fund it besides using general fund taxes. So what some opportunities are. So after the environmental fair, I can start preparing for that. I have nothing, since our last study session, I've done no work on it today. So I hoped I would have, but had a few other priorities.
Okay, and then Roger had a question.
I also think that if we're looking at federal funds, looking at how much we've invested in the river study and envisioning, if there were federal funds that became available for us to stage in one of the first or second stages so that we keep the vision moving forward, I think that's critical. That the river is a central item to our community, and if we can secure that and create the vision of how it can move forward, if we can do that through a federal funded project, I would say we need to do that.
I am looking out for grants. Valley Pride has decided to take the lead on implementing a project, the first project. They're looking at Centennial Rainy Park. Don't see a lot of federal money for that. I mean, just to be blunt, that's going to be a challenge finding Army Corps money that doesn't, unless we do a whole really big project.
And that's my point, is there's supposed to be supposedly at least $1 trillion set aside of infrastructure reinvestment. I think we could sell that type of infrastructure reinvestment because this is an aging project and it's about to age out. And so if we were able to do something that sets that apart for a long-term basis, again, I think it qualify theoretically anyway in terms of one of those infrastructure projects. And that might be money that's one-time money that would be available to get that going, and then there's other things that down the road.
Well, I will look into that, and then probably tied with that is going to be the big thing of getting it shovel ready, and so spending the resources to have a shovel ready plan, and council support for staff time to push that forward. So that is always sort of a challenge.
I'm want you to take notes. If we keep talking long enough, everything in the packet will be in.
I know, well, I noticed that. I was thinking that same thing. And I was just wondering, I mean, do you want to, I've got a list that I'll visit with the department heads and stuff about that seem like some priorities that I think are pretty good priorities.
Give me some more.
Do you want to give us more? We can do that. It's just a matter of funding, and so.
I know.
Okay. Yeah, fire it up, man. I'll flip the page.
The fire department training facility. And, I mean, they'd like a permanent structure, but they've come to us in the past with mobile structure options. I'd really like the idea of exploring the compost issue of our solid waste. And while that may have some initial cost up front, we really think that there's opportunity there to recoup our investment rather quickly.
And we've gone down the road on both of those a little bit, and it's a matter of just
and then
finishing that off.
We've talked before and on fleet services, and that will, when we get a new public works director, maybe we can pick that back up again. But those are especially the compost and fleet services, I think could have a significant impact on our budget.
I think that
would make other opportunities available to address some of our other priorities.
I think so. Did you have some that you?
Yeah, well, one that jumps out to me is obviously the siphon interchange and the connective roads. I think we better be prepared to do that. That's a high priority. And then I can just, if you want to add a little hashtag to some of the ones that have already been mentioned, but like the composting slide at Ross Park.
Is that a combo?
Composting slide. Baby, we're gonna make some money 2 ways. Hashtag compost slide. All right. This will be a real slippery
I like
slide.
that fleet idea. The river stuff. I love. I mean, I saw this about the Johnny Creek Aquifer. I think that needs to be
looked
at. And then one thing I just wasn't sure exactly what this would entail, or I guess I just need more information on it, was the Strategic Economic Development Master Plan. I don't fully.
Okay.
I don't know if someone wants to enlighten me more about what your thoughts are on that, but.
Melanie.
I can't really give you a whole lot of information. Melanie Gigley, sorry. I can't give you a whole lot of information. This is something that was being discussed, I think, mostly at the PDA level. To create a plan to actually guide efforts.
Guide the PDA efforts is what that really was. So.
Okay.
Okay. We've got quite the list. Is that a list something we should build on?
Is there any discussion in terms of a composite kind of 911 center with the county and various police departments? Is there any?
I've brought that up a few times, and that is a very unpopular topic among a couple cities and a county.
Territorial protection.
Yeah, we've got some of that, and there's other concerns with fire and police and ambulance and sheriffs and.
So why can't we go to the cloud?
Maybe we need to just go to the cloud. We'll put IT in charge of it. That's a great idea.
There's some real pluses to having a couple of them. Well, Jim, I mean, it's a tough sell, but it's also a good thing to have a couple of systems in case one goes down that they can.
Well, if one goes down, everything goes to Boise.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a great idea.
That argument was brought up, and then right after the argument was brought up, one of them went down, and all the calls went to Boise. So
well, that's an area I'm concerned about. Another one is, have we given all the thought to long-range water supply that we need to?
Well, we need to go back and have that discussion. That's for council. What's that?
And Justin and a few of us have been working on that as well. And
yeah, Justin Armstrong, Water Superintendent. We have been looking at our options with available sources of supply for surface waters to meet the objective and goals that we discussed a couple months ago regarding additional water in the Portneuf. One of our other goals that we're seeking currently right now is we are looking for an additional source on the Highland Bench. We met with the school district the other day to discuss 2 potential sites for test wells. And so they were open to that concept. They'll vote on that next week, and we're hopeful that we can find a good quality source on that north end.
We talked somewhat in terms of the water, recycling some of the water to water the golf courses with other types of gray water or something. Is there anything else being done with any of those things?
Yeah, so we've discussed and looked at some of the options of utilizing the old Satterfield well to run a new line. One of the challenges is storing some of that water. That current well supply will not meet the peak hour conditions for Highland Well, and so we would need some sort of open basin to capture that water and then repump that into the system. The other thing,
a bunch of little catch basins around all the holes.
New water hazard.
There's a couple gullies up there, but yeah.
And the other thing that's kind of lowered that in priority is the Satterfield well, where it's high, it meets the threshold at 10 MCL on arsenic. And so putting that into culinary use, there's a lot of risk with that. We're right at that limit. We don't know after pumping it for a month what may change within that. We may exceed, we may go down. And so we're exploring all of those options. There are options of mixing that. However, some of that doesn't provide an opportunity for redundancy of that station if we're right up against the limit on that.
In the last 2 weeks, I've sold a couple of homes that required well tests. And when the results came back, I suddenly became very concerned in terms of water quality. Yeah. There were things in the water that we don't want to drink.
It's a thing we watch very close.
I know you do. Yeah. We have how many wells again?
We've got currently 17 wells in operation within the valley, and then 2 wells out at the airport that operate that system.
And any of the wells that we're not using, is it because of the quality of the water, or?
Well, there have been a couple of wells that are approaching the limits on nitrates. One was a backup well located out by Ross Park, and it was approaching that MCL, and so as we approached that level, we decided to take it offline until that level lowers. And those can fluctuate based on seasonal patterns, how much rainfall we get, how much infiltration, how much mixing within the system. So there's a lot of variables that we continue to monitor and look at.
Mentioning Johnny Creek, we still have quite a few septic tanks up there. Where do we stand in terms of thinking of tying that whole area, especially if we had some additional development up there into the sewer system? John maybe is the one to answer on that.
Don't go away yet. And I know you're not prepared for this, Justin, so I'll be gentle. My question is do you have the capability in-house to test for removal of nitrates or arsenic through a CEC column, or do you have to contract that out for removing nitrates from water?
Yeah, we would have to contract that out.
Okay, John.
John Herrick, Water Pollution Control. We have a plan on what to do up on Johnny Creek to get sewer up there, but we're lacking money.
Oh.
It's there would have to be a possible collaboration between the homeowners up there and the city to fund it.
Like a local improvement district?
Exactly.
And the people on the bottom of the hill pay more than the people on the top.
Oh, really?
We tried that before, and it didn't pass. So, it's an option, but, we're looking at a significant amount of money to do that.
But that's impacting the quality of water for everybody else.
It is, yes.
So maybe as a city, we are going to have to bite the bullet on that.
That's...
This is a discussion about infrastructure needs and perhaps outside money. It could be that if we were able to get some funding where on the sewer system up in the Johnny Creek area, that would give us a chance to offset the transfer into that system of some of the septic tanks.
Yes.
Future, we'd be way ahead.
Yes.
If we could find a granting system of some sort like that, it would help us to do that. We'd be so far ahead.
And that's something we've almost on an annual basis asked to happen from DC and see if there's any federal funds.
But it's infrastructure, so again, be a lot of individual contractors hooking them up.
Yeah, so definitely. We're reaching the end of our financial plan, and if that's the direction the city council would like to go, then we can definitely plan for that for the future, after 2019. But it's going to be a significant amount, basically about the same as the project that we're just almost completing on the plant now.
23 million.
It's going to be pretty close, yeah.
Yeah, I think an LED is the way to go with that, at least partially. I just don't think it's everybody else's. I understand the water issue, but I just don't see it as being everybody else's problem.
I was thinking that it kind of public-private cooperation to form an LID if you got some substantial front-loaded funding, it might help that district.
Yeah,
it's true.
But it's definitely, we're going to have to, we work on that during the environmental fair, try to let people know about that. But it's something that we can ramp up our efforts to do some more proactive communication with the public.
Okay. Are we okay there? Okay, we've got quite the list that we'll be working on.
There's lots more.
There's a lot more.
Steve, why don't you just pass that paper down to
When will we make these determinations?
Well, I think what we'll do is I will visit with the department heads about each and every all of these, and I will have them just put a number to it, and during their presentation for budget, they'll give us where they've been, they'll give us the budget that's flat, and then they'll give us their desires, and we'll make these part of those desires, and so we'll have an opportunity to.
So if we have 100 items, we're going to prioritize 100 items?
Well, I'm going to have all of the department heads bring these during their presentation, so that we'll have a number of what they look like, and then we'll have to make a decision of, maybe we'll say we can do 2 of these, maybe we'll say we can't do any of them this year, but we've got a priority list right here from the council, and they can keep it on their mind, so that as they're planning their year out, maybe they can incorporate some of this in those as well. So that's what my thought is.
Okay.
Okay, then with that, thank you, Will. Council is 12:30. I don't know if lunch is here. I don't know how long agenda item 12 will take.
I bet you it goes really quick.
I bet it can go quick.
Lunch
and I would
here, you can take us to Uncle Jim's on your credit.
Do you want me to do it, or do you want me to wait until after?
I would prefer to go through it so we can get the lunch and then go to lunch. So why don't we do that? Agenda item number 12, fiscal year 2016 comprehensive annual financial report and popular report update. Finance department staff will be present to complete fiscal year 2016 comprehensive annual fiscal report and popular report to the city council.
Okay, so this is the report we're going to look at first.
Page by page.
And I gave you a little outline so you can follow along with what I'm telling you. So basically what I'm going to do
This is the completion of our comprehensive annual financial report, the one that's required by law that we complete each year. It's the audited financial statements for the city. And two of the main highlights I would like to tell you about. Yesterday we met with the audit committee. Dorn Lamson came in and gave an update as to the completion of the audit. We discussed various items.
Who is the audit committee?
The audit committee is myself, Dorn Lamson, our auditor, Council President Steve Brown, and Mayor Brian Blatt.
Okay,
sits on the committee. So basically what we do is we discuss the completion of the audit, the process, any concerns that we may have, things that we might strategize better for next year, or any upcoming changes. There is one new GASB statement that I'll explain to you at the end that will impact us down the road. And then to also inform you that we had a clean opinion from the auditor. That's called an unmodified opinion, which means that we had no issues in the audit. We had no findings in the single audit section. Those are all important parts of the completion of the audit. It impacts our ability to obtain federal funding. Actually, one step in the process that I will be completing by tomorrow is the auditor initiates the process to update the clearinghouse. That's where your granting information, your granting agencies will go to see how you completed your last year's use of funds and if you had any findings. So this impacts us for future grants that we may come up with. So in the report, just so you have an understanding of how to look through this wonderful book, on the purple tab, that begins your letter of transmittal. It's basically gives a profile of your city, the local economy information, long-term financial planning, any relevant financial policies, major initiatives, and also we acknowledge the award that we received for the 2015 report that where we had GFOA reviews our report, and we met the expectations of that and received the Certificate of Excellence. And that is all through pages 1 through 7. Then, and I'd like to take this moment too to acknowledge a report of this magnitude isn't produced without a really good staff, and I have a good staff. The finance department works as a team, and that's how we produce this product. It takes roughly, beginning to end through the audit process, about 6 months to do. And we do this around our other duties and obligations within the city. On the yellow tab, this is your independent auditor's report. This is the one where it states, under opinions on page 12, it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the aggregate discretely presented component units, each major fund, the aggregate remaining fund information, and the respective budgetary comparison for the general fund and the street fund and the other major special revenue funds of the city as of September 30th, 2016, and the respective changes in financial position and, where applicable, cash flows thereof for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that is your clean opinion. On the orange tab, oh, and within this section we also have the management and discussion analysis. Those are pages 14 through 28. That's your green tab. I skipped ahead here. The big comment I have here is your net change in net position was an increase of $13,112,875. This is always a positive sign. You're looking for your city to grow in its net position, which basically means your assets are larger than your liabilities, okay? Where did the growth come from? When you look at the governmental activities, we had growth or an increase of $4,443,111. A large portion of that increase came from the cash increase. Remember, we've been working on building those reserves. I've been commenting on it in our cash reports on a monthly basis. This is just a reflection within your financial report that is a true statement as well. So that was a large portion of that increase. The business type activities increased by $8,669,764. The largest portion that impacted that increase was the WPC project, the work in progress that went on the books for that, and also a lot of your water department projects, the airport well, and the tank that was constructed during the year. Then on the orange tab, that takes you to your government-wide statements. And in these statements, these are what we call full accruals. So we take all funds of the city, excluding your fiduciary and excluding your agency funds, and we report on them in one collapsed picture. We identify them between governmental activities and business activities. Your business type activities are going to be sanitation, water, sewer, ambulance, and a couple of your internal service funds. All the other funds are reported on the governmental side. It's easier to tell you that one in detail unless you fill in the blank on the other one. The statement of net position increased, and it is sitting at a position of $204,976,606. Once again, I will point out the impact of GASB 68, which we implemented last year. Remember, you have a pension asset reported here on this statement, on the statement of net position, and you also have pension liabilities. Remember, this is information where we're grabbing information provided to us by person and reporting it as to our allocated share in our financial statements. Remember that a pension asset, if I wanted to go and cash in that asset, I can't. If it's a liability, and the liability is sitting at $20 million, we can't go and pay that off if we had $20 million sitting around. This is more of a reporting tool to allow you to know how is your pension plan for the state and your portion, how is it functioning as a whole. There are a lot of cities, states, or not cities, but states that are in trouble with their pension plans. That's the reason why this rule came about, and we were forced into reporting on it. Used to be we only reported it as a footnote. Now we reported it actually in the financial statements. I don't know that I quite agree with that approach, but there you have it. Because it does alter your ending position, and it's something that you can't tap into. You can't pay off that liability, and you can't cash in that asset. So it's more of a reporting mechanism that I think should have been left as a footnote. But those are the rules of governmental accounting standards, so we therefore report it in the statements. Then we also report off to the side, you see the component unit. We have a discrete component unit in the Pocatello Development Authority. We report that there. Then on the statement of activities, that is basically your income and expense statement that just reports on all of your governmental activities and your business type activities for the year. Then we'll go to the, let's see what I'll tell you here. We also have within the state basic financial statements, you have the governmental fund statements. That's taking your governmental funds, all your major funds plus your non-majors, and we report those on a modified accrual basis, and then in this statement, we're actually converting it to full accrual, and you'll see the analysis that goes through that on page 33 for the asset, or for the balance sheet statement. Then, and also for the revenue statement, revenue and expense statement. Then we also have the budget to actual for both general fund and your street funds. Then we get into the proprietary fund statements, and in the proprietary fund statements, you have your combining statements of net position. Then you get into your combining statements of revenue and expenses and changes in net position, and then of course your cash flow statements for all your business type activities. So that's taking you through page 47. Then you have to report on your statement of fiduciary net position and your statement of changes. Those are your basic financial statements for the city of Pocatello. Then pages 50 through 94 are the notes. This is an important section where it gives you detail about the conversion of your data from modified to full accrual. It gives you detail about your loans. It gives you detail about your capital assets. I'm trying to think. Receivables. So you can learn a lot more about the details of your statements if you go through the notes. And that's the section you would look at. Pages 91 through 94 are the required supplementary information. This information is reporting on the 2 pension plans, the PERSI for both FRF and for the basic plan, and then also for your police retirement plan. One thing I didn't comment on yet, but you will note there is a prior period adjustment on your statement of net position and your statement of activities. This is related to reporting on the GASB 68. When we get the information from PERSI on our allocated share, they break it down. They give you the basic plan and they tell you this is your percentage for the city of Pocatello. What they didn't bother to communicate to us in the first year was that they had segregated out the fire portion on the basic plan and reported that percentage in a separate area. And so I caught it this year, and so it's part of the prior period adjustment because we needed to pick up that portion. And that total prior period adjustment was $3,475,798. So it's substantial, but remember, this is one of those things where the liability you can't pay, and it's also the asset you don't own. But it is part of the reporting mechanism that we have to do for GASB 68 in reporting on our share of the PERSI pension plan. Then in the next sections, which starts with the red tab, we go right into the other financial statements. So you basically have your non-major governmental funds, your remaining proprietary fund statements, which is your budget to actual, your fiduciary statements, and your agency statements. It's a big section, so I wouldn't try to go page by page. And you also have your internal service funds in there as well, and it goes into detail. Agency funds, just so you understand what those are, agency funds are funds where the money comes into us and then the money goes out. Sales tax is an agency fund. Unclaimed property, I'm trying to think what other ones. We have a fund set up for when people are retired and they make COBRA payments to us for their the Delta Dental and the vision. We collect the payments and then we process those to the insurance company. So it's more of a pass-through type fund where the money doesn't belong to us. Then the next section, which is right at the blue tab, and that's pages 166 through 188. This is the statistical section, and this tells you quite a bit. It kind of takes the report and it breaks it down into small parts, tells you about trends. One of the things that you can look at is you can look at financial trends, revenue capacity. This is also where we do that revenue coverage to make sure we're meeting our obligation with our bonded debt and making sure that the funds that have bonded debt, that the requirement that they have for revenues to expenditures is appropriate to meet debt service payments. Then you have debt capacity, demographic and economic information. So we have like principal taxpayers, principal employers, and then your operating information that comes from the departments giving details about what's happened in the year for them. And it goes back, these are all 10-year trends, so you have quite a bit of information in this section. Then the light green tab is...
Before you leave that, on page 174.
Okay.
Talks about the last 10 fiscal years. The total direct tax rate, that last column, that's
right.
That's what the property owner is paying to...
The total direct tax rate, and I've got to remember how the calculation goes on this one. So you have your total assessed value based on what you're taking in taxes, because this is reporting on your tax rolls, okay?
Yeah.
Less the exemptions. So then you have the amount that is the total assessed valuation for those different categories, and then how much you're actually levying for.
So for 16, the $10.77
Right.
is per 1,000?
It'd be 100,000.
Per 100,000?
Yes, everything's by 100.
Okay.
And you'll note that it went down a little bit. If you remember, in 16,
It went to 105.
Yeah.
0.0105. The
Right.
year before was 0.0107.
we didn't quite take as much as we could have.
Could have. Yeah, should have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Big boo.
Then in the green section, that's our single audit section. This is the important part. This is the part that Doran tests on specific grants. This is a requirement. This is a change in this particular schedule. It looks a little different than it has in the previous years. We now actually comment on subrecipients. When Melanie was up here talking about CDBG, and she talked about if we gave money and allowed another agency to expend it for our purpose. I can't remember exactly what the topic was. It was on doing the smaller projects.
Yep.
If we gave those monies, this is where the subrecipient reporting comes in. So this is when she talks about the administration level, we still have all responsibility and oversight, and we report on that here. And that also means that it can be subject to testing. And so if you have a group that's doing this work for you, then we have to have access to the information in order for the audit to be completed, if it should be selected. So sometimes it doesn't trim off as much time as we hope it would, right? Then, of course, you have the notes to the schedule of expenditure of federal awards. This is new this year. Passenger facility charge report, which is also required for us because we receive those monies for the airport. And then your letters that are related. And the most important page, 197, that said we had no findings.
You couldn't find anything?
Nothing. No findings.
More or less. No findings, more or less.
Hey, when you have findings, they're not positive.
Yeah, we don't like findings.
So if we wanted to borrow some federal funds, we're all right.
Yes, and the next step, like I said, is to report to the Federal Clearinghouse, and I'm going to complete that by tomorrow. I've already received the files from the auditor, and then I do the next step to send it off. The other thing that we've also completed this year with the completion of these reports for here and for Pocatello Development Authority is I've already reported everything to Central Registry, so we are complete for 2017. And so that's another important requirement because it can impact your funding. If you aren't reporting on a timely basis, that information, they can hold back your sales tax revenue.
In terms of the legislature, there were several bills that would impact us, like on foregone.
Yes.
Anything you can share with us in terms of the impact that's going to have on us?
Well, this year, the foregone, it doesn't have an impact unless you being the group, choose to
Walk away.
to give it back, is how I would describe it. You have 1.7 million out there. If you say, I don't want to have the 1.7 million on the books anymore, and we go through the process of acknowledging that publicly, it will be gone, and you will never be able to access that again. Okay? It doesn't address going forward. Let's say you did do that, and then we get to the next year, and then you build some more foregone again. I don't believe they responded to that in the law. It seems like it would build again. The concern is down the road that they're going to take this away permanently, and that would be my concern for next year. Last year, the rule that they changed, remember we had to, within our public hearing, within the ordinance, I had to acknowledge that we were taking foregone, how we were going to spend it, and you had to go through all those procedures. The fortunate part was you could tack it on into your publication, so I didn't have to do two separate publications costing us more money to take those funds. But it concerns me because I think it's going to eventually push cities they aren't going to have a choice. They're going to have to take their 3%. If they keep moving down the road they're moving, because you can't predict what's going to happen in terms of your revenue sources down the road, and it's going to put pressure on you to take these funds so that you can be more aggressive in taking care of your issues and not hoping for growth to take the place down the road. Because you may get down the road and you have an emergency and you better have the funds in reserve, because now your foregone is not there as a rainy day fund for you to take advantage of. And so I see that as a problem. So like when you were talking about those major projects, the one thing that kind of hit my mind as I was thinking about how we don't have any specific funding right now for stormwater, how you want more money set aside for your ITD projects. You have foregone available, and depending on how we end up with this year, you could actually plan in the street department. That's who would be the one in charge. They have an unlimited levy amount. There is no levy limitation there. And so if you chose to take more taxes or even take some of your foregone and kind of build that situation to where you actually have funds going in to address stormwater issues, or more money is being set aside for ITD projects, you have the ability to make those choices. And I kind of wanted to let you know that, because that is a possibility. If these things are important to you, that would be a possible funding source for you.
Any other questions for Joyce? Super. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Appreciate you and all that you've done here.
Well, I appreciate my staff, and one last thing. Our accountant, senior accountant, Ashley Linton, she just completed all 4 of her tests for the CPA exam, and so she is within months of getting her certificate at this point.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Sounds
it's
great.
very good. Now we have 2 CPAs in the office, and that's a good thing.
Super. Thank you very much. We will go ahead and adjourn to a working lunch.
Before you go in there, Hawk.
Then do I adjourn, or do we just go into the...